Chapter 1203. After 2 rounds, it looked like Super Chen was just taking a beating. His face was already swollen like a pig's head, his body was covered in bruises, and even the upper half of his school uniform had been smashed by Zhu Hanyun's punches. Chaotic Rain was a high-density and high-attack technique, and its lethality was staggering. However, Zhu Hanyun wasn't completely unscathed under the relentless onslaught. After 2 rounds of one-sided attacks, his aura was already a little unstable. Zhu Hanyun wouldn't be able to use Chaotic Rain a second time in a short period of time, since it was a fist technique that tested endurance and energy consumption. Most importantly, Zhu Hanyun actually still had some misgivings, and hadn't completely let loose. Considering that he could advance to the next round, Zhu Hanyun wanted to preserve some of his physical strength and spirit energy for the next round of battle. He had thought that his Chaotic Rain move would be enough to trigger Super Chen's protective golden talisman, but unfortunately, the situation didn't go his way. Although it looked like Super Chen had already reached his limit, and he might be able to trigger the protective golden talisman with just one ordinary punch, a competition was a competition, and there was no room for luck. Zhu Hanyun felt that he had miscalculated against Super Chen. If he hadn't taken the competition into account when he had used Chaotic Rain in the second round, and had instead focused on dealing with the current situation, Super Chen might have already been eliminated. But unfortunately, there were no ifs in this world. I've been studying martial arts under my father's guidance since I was a child, and I've grown up with various senior brothers and sisters. I'm afraid it won't be that easy for you to knock me down. Super Chen wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Although his teeth had been broken, this injury might really be nothing to him. In order to write his essay, Wang Ling had specially flipped through Super Chen's childhood memories, and the toughness in Super Chen's bones had really been passed down from his ancestors. Fighting above one's level was commonplace. If the people you practiced with since you were a child were always 2 or 3 levels higher than you on average, you might also be able to take a beating like this. So, this kind of man wouldn't just knock down like that. From this point of view, Super Chen and Wang Zhen were actually a little similar. The difference was that Super Chen had been forced to take a beating when he practiced with others, while Wang Zhen had been actively trained since he was a child, and even had to beat himself up. So when Wang Zhen, who was watching from the sidelines at that moment, saw Super Chen's indomitable spirit, he couldn't help sighing with emotion in his heart. This was a promising talent. While Super Chen was talking, Zhu Hanyun quickly adjusted his breathing. As the team leader of Titan High School, even if he couldn't help the school win the competition in the end, he absolutely couldn't lose to an ordinary number 60 high representative. Classmate Super Chen, why are you doing this? A helpless expression appeared on Zhu Hanyun's face. You should make better use of your golden protective light. Relying on your own tenacity to persevere in the competition will only bring you harm. Although my Chaotic Rain flow just now was lenient and didn't directly attack your vital acupuncture points, but at the same time, I sealed off many of your acupuncture points. You should already be unable to use your spiritual power now. Under the state of having your spirit sealed by me, you basically have no chance of winning. Why don't you surrender earlier? As soon as he finished speaking, the scene boiled up again. Super Chen's spirit has been sealed. Hero Guo frowned deeply. Sealing a spirit was like hitting an acupoint, although it was only temporary, it was absolutely taboo for a cultivator to have their spirit sealed in the middle of a fight. Hearing Zhu Hanyun's words, Super Chen clenched his teeth. Even if it's a spirit sealed, it won't be so easy for you to defeat me. Maybe you even help me open up some Rendu Ermai, making me stronger. Hearing this, Zhu Hanyun immediately sneered. What a joke, do you think this kind of thing can happen to you? In the process of receiving a one-sided beating, there was indeed the possibility of an acupoint being opened up, but the probability was so low that it was almost the same as winning the lottery. But in the third round, Super Chen was the first to attack. Even though he was injured all over, not only did Super Chen's speed and strength not weaken in the slightest, they actually looked even stronger than before. Even though his spirit had been sealed, he was still able to display such a powerful explosive power. Zhu Hanyun looked at Super Chen's burning gaze incredulously, his face full of disbelief. Impossible. Everything is reasonable, nothing is impossible. Super Chen punched Zhu Hanyun's face fiercely. To everyone's surprise, the Titan art that Zhu Hanyun cultivated didn't seem to have any effect at that moment. With Super Chen's punch, Zhu Hanyun was directly sent flying like a kite with a broken string. He landed heavily on the ground, leaving only a shallow pit. What the hell is going on? On the side, Xia Ming was puzzled. Classmate Zhu Hanyun's Titan art has already reached a certain level, and he weighs several thousand jin. There's no way he could have been sent flying so easily. Everyone turned to look at Zhu Hanyun's little junior sister, Yan Xiaochun. Seeing her puckered little mouth and anxious expression, a lot of people realized that Super Chen might have accidentally broken some vital part of the Titan art. While a lot of people were guessing what on earth had happened, Wang Ling had already seen through the answer to the questionnaire. For a body technique cultivator, sealing a spirit actually didn't mean much, since martial body techniques relied more on one's qi or qigong. The reason why Zhu Hanyun paid so much attention to maintaining his spirit energy was largely because of the Titan art he cultivated. When he was full of spirit energy, Zhu Hanyun, who cultivated the Titan art, was like a balloon filled with air, his body brimming with tension. The density of his body would also increase with the technique, and he would look as indestructible and as heavy as Mount Tai. However, once his spirit energy was consumed, Zhu Hanyun's weight would also drop. This was like a balloon leaking air. The consequence of his weight loss was naturally that his body wouldn't be as dense as before. That was why Zhu Hanyun's body had been so easily shaken by Super Chen's punch. Under normal circumstances, an ordinary punch naturally wouldn't have been able to do this. Where does your strength come from? Zhu Hanyun crawled up from the ground, still trying hard to recover his spirit energy. At the same time, he was astonished by the strength of Super Chen's punch. Didn't I tell you? Your chaotic rain flow seems to have stimulated my body. I feel like all the cells in my body are boiling now, and there's a steady stream of energy pouring out. Super Chen looked even more excited. Zhu Hanyun's body swayed at these words. F***K, had he run into a legendary expert at running his mouth? Chapter 1204. The outcome of the duel was still a mystery, and Lotus Sun analyzed the situation. For every martial artist who cultivated diligently for many years, the cells in their bodies would evolve as their tendons and meridians were unblocked and their acupoints were activated. These evolved cells were called power cells. There were 80 trillion cells in an adult's body, and grandmasters who had been practicing the latest martial arts for many years would have a higher proportion of power cells in their bodies after continuous development. For example, at Master Li Xiaokai's level, power cells would take up at least half of his body. There were at least 40 trillion of them. These power cells could play the role of all the other cells, and had powerful regulatory and cleaning abilities that could kill all the bad cells in the body. Hero Guo rubbed his double chin. So, classmate Lotus Sun, what you mean is that Zhu Hanyun's chaotic rain flow activated Super Chen's acupoints just now, thereby stimulating his body to produce even more power cells. That's right. Lotus Sun nodded. But these power cells were only temporary. As long as they were cells, they would constantly die and be replaced by the body's metabolism, and even powerful power cells were no exception. Thus, in order to ensure that the number of power cells in their bodies wouldn't weaken, martial artists would repeatedly train a lot every day. That kind of suffering wasn't something an ordinary person could endure. Super Chen had been cultivating since he was a child, and had a certain amount of power cells in his body. In contrast, Zhu Hanyun, who had the Titan art, was the complete opposite of Super Chen. To put it bluntly, the Titan art itself relied heavily on spirit energy, which stimulated the meridians and acupoints in the body to achieve an effect similar to activating power cells. The downside was that once spirit energy disappeared, a person would be as fragile as a piece of paper. On the other side, Super Chen seized the opportunity. He had just activated his power cells, and facing Zhu Hanyun, whose spirit energy hadn't yet fully recovered, he stepped forward and gave him a good beating. Zhu Hanyun had been accumulating power for too long, and since the Titan art hadn't been activated yet, his defense was greatly weakened. In the end, he was finally unable to bear the burden, and the golden protective talisman on him lit up. The outcome of this duel was unexpected, but reasonable. There were two main reasons for Zhu Hanyun's failure. First, he had already used up a lot of his stamina and spirit energy before the 8th day, and second, he had been hesitant during the fight. Before the Titan art disappeared, he had poured all his strength into killing Super Chen, and wanted to hold back for the next round of the competition. In the end, it had the opposite effect. Not only had he not entered the next round, but Super Chen had seized the opportunity to be eliminated in one fell swoop. This battle is really exciting. Indeed, there's nothing to say about our Titan High's inferior skills. Number 60 High's younger generation is to be reckoned with. Super Chen will definitely have some achievements in physical skills in the future, and he might really become a grandmaster like Li Shaokai. As the headmaster of Titan High School, Lu Tian naturally felt humiliated when he saw his team leader lose the battle. But although she was angry, as a headmaster, Lu Tian couldn't directly show it. She could only comment on the match on the spot and praise Super Chen, which gave her the air of a great master. But as headmaster Lu Tian's classmate, number 60 High School's headmaster Chen knew all too well what kind of person this old guy was, and was probably already vomiting blood in his heart. The other headmasters around them weren't fools, and could naturally hear the hint of jealousy in headmaster Lu Tian's words. Comparing a foundation establishment student to the Grandmaster Li Shaokai, wasn't this clearly showing that she wasn't in the right position? But while all the headmasters were well aware of this, they still smiled politely and echoed Lu Tian's sentiments one after another. After all, Titan High still had a chance. They still had a girl called Yan Xiaochun who hadn't been eliminated. During the intermission, the order of the draw was decided. The second round of the competition was between Yi Jiang and Lotus Sunday. There was no doubt that this was a battle of the spotlight. While both sides were preparing, relevant tactical discussions were underway. Although the 6 students up against number 60 High were from different schools, number 60 High was currently their common enemy. If they could get rid of Lotus Sun, their morale would definitely be greatly boosted. It was very likely that they would win consecutive matches and wipe out number 60 High in one fell swoop. I'm afraid that Lotus Sun is the strongest person on the other side. As long as we can get rid of her, I think we'll be able to win the next few rounds. Nan Yishio concluded. A large part of the reason why number 60 High's team had been able to maintain a high level of spirit and stamina until now was because of Lotus Sunday. As long as Lotus Sun wasn't eliminated, she could use her mysterious sea sword Qi to help her team members recover some spirit power and stamina. A water sword spirit had a so-called healer halo, which could be used to assist in healing. So as long as they could get rid of the healer, number 60 High's most powerful fulcrum would instantly collapse. Now, everyone on Nan Yishio's side was pinning their hopes on Yi Jiang. Even before Yi Jiang went on stage, Nan Yishio organized the other 4 people, including himself, to instill some spirit power into Yi Jiang to ensure that he would have enough spirit power when he faced Lotus Sunday. After about 10 minutes of preparation, the second round of the spotlight match finally began. As the captain of Sword God Academy, Yi Jiang could already be called a dark horse in the competition. Lotus Sun, who was on the other side of the confrontation, was the center of attention. Student Lotus Sun, you can do it. Super Chen had just been injured, but he was now shouting louder than anyone else. Because just now, Lotus Sun had personally used her mysterious sea to heal some of his injuries. It was as if classmate Lotus Sun had personally caressed him, which instantly filled him with adrenaline. Don't worry, I'll definitely win this round. Lotus Sun's face beamed with a confident smile, and her school uniform skirt swayed slightly in the wind. On the other side, Yi Jiang coldly crossed his arms. His pure white school uniform made him look especially dazzling in the sunlight, like the son of the sun. Both sides were sword experts, and a lot of people were curious as to what kind of collision would occur. In the next moment, as Yi Jiang's aura surged, many people's expressions instantly changed. This is a sword spirit blessing. The corners of many people's eyes twitched as they looked incredulous. He was just at the foundation establishment stage, But he could actually become one with the sword? A lot of people couldn't believe their eyes. By becoming one with the sword, he could fuse with the spirit sword and slash out sword chi invisibly. Furthermore, this wasn't considered breaking the rules, because in theory, as long as a spirit sword magic treasure wasn't used, it would be a proper duel of body techniques. So you also know this move. Faced with Yi Jiang's aggressive aura, Lotus Sun naturally wasn't at a disadvantage. As a talented and beautiful girl, she had already mastered becoming one with the sword a long time ago. But she hadn't used it before, mainly because she felt a little ashamed. Because when she became one with the mysterious sea spirit sword, she would transform into a magical girl. Chapter 1205. Becoming one with the sword often depended on the characteristics of the sword spirit. Not all sword spirits would transform after fusing with the sword master. As a sword spirit whose true form was that of a cute girl, when the two girls fused together, they naturally had to consider the issue of clothing. Thus, when Lotus Sun also became one with the sword, her school uniform immediately transformed into a luxurious azure dress. For a moment, many people's pupils contracted. Who would have thought that Lotus Sun would really become a magical girl? After a few breaths, the duel officially began. The azure dress seemed to impede Lotus Sun's movements, but in fact, the girl's speed far exceeded everyone's imagination. Her azure dress was an outer garment formed from mysterious sea's spirit power, and wasn't a real body. When necessary, it could actually turn into mist. As she leapt, her gorgeous dress left a brilliant ripple in the air as she threw a punch at Yi Jiang. But this was no ordinary fist technique. She had wrapped mysterious sea's sword intent around her fist. Thus, this punch was no longer a fist, but a sword. The attack range was actually much wider than it looked. Yi Jiang felt his internal organs tremble violently. After Lotus Sun and mysterious sea fused together, the aura of her attack was like a tsunami. The fact that a spirit sword could form a sword spirit proved that the bond between the sword master and the spirit sword had reached a certain level. A swordsman who had activated a sword spirit might not necessarily be an expert, but a swordsman who didn't even have a sword spirit could only be described as worrisome in terms of swordsmanship. The fact that Lotus Sun could activate a sword spirit at the foundation establishment stage was enough to prove her skill in swordsmanship. Thus, Yi Jiang knew from the beginning that she was an excellent opponent. But even so, he still hadn't expected her to be able to do this. In the face of Lotus Sun's punch, Yi Jiang didn't dodge. His expression was calm and composed, and his pure white school uniform reflected a brilliant light. The next moment, a resplendent phantom appeared behind him. This was the sword spirit of Yi Jiang's Li Yang sword. It turned out to be a person of light whose face couldn't be seen clearly, and whose entire body shone with holy splendor. In a flash, everyone understood that this was a contest between water and fire. Yi Jiang summoned his own sword spirit, Yang Li. This was not a simple manifestation of the sword spirit, but a manifestation of sword will resonance. This was a whole new realm after becoming one with the sword. A simple, one with the sword, could only add the power of the sword spirit to one's body and enjoy the protection of the sword chi. On the other hand, those who resonated with the sword intent could freely use the sword chi, freely fusing it with every part of their body. Even if they plucked a strand of hair, they could turn it into an incomparably sharp weapon that could cut through iron like mud. When Yi Jiang completed the sword will resonance, the people around him were in an uproar. Even the principals in the command center could not sit still and stood up. Genius. A true genius. A principal couldn't help but sigh. The God of Sword Academy actually produced such a person. You can already resonate with sword intent at such a young age? The headmaster's shock was not without reason. Sword intent resonance was a very high realm in swordsmanship cultivation. Even a nascent soul cultivator might not be able to achieve this step, let alone a mere foundation establishment student. To be able to learn sword will resonance at such a young age, there was no doubt that this Yi Jiang would become a master swordsman in the future. The headmasters didn't know about old Huang and President Qi's private discussion earlier. After seeing Yi Jiang display the power of sword will resonance, everyone began to speculate about his true identity. It would be great if we could poach such a seedling. A principal sighed. You want to poach him? God of Sword Academy is a new school to begin with, and it doesn't have much of a reputation. If we can extend an olive branch, the other party might not reject it. In your dreams. Do you know who the person behind God of Sword Academy is? Someone in the know laughed bitterly. At this point, all the headmasters instantly fell silent. They were all smart people, and there were some things that could be said without going too far. In fact, after thinking about it carefully, all the headmasters knew how deep the water behind this was. God of Sword Academy was a new school that had been established for less than 5 years. In terms of seniority, such a school wouldn't even qualify for the national competition this time. So why had God of Sword Academy passed? This proved that there was probably a very powerful almighty standing behind the headmaster of God of Sword Academy. God of Sword. Sage of Sword. Yi Jiang, the familiar surname stunned many of the headmasters present. They all thought of one person at the same time. Could it be? Have you finally realized it? You're really slow. On the other side, Yi Jiang's attack was finally launched after the sword intent resonance. His entire body erupted with astonishing sword qi, which was mixed with the unique scorching aura of the Liyang sword. It was scorching and threatening. It collided with Lotus Sun's sword intent, which had fused into her jab, and scalding steam instantly rose from the two. Lotus Sun was indeed very strong. The moment the sword intent intertwined, Yi Jiang exclaimed in his heart. At the very least, this wasn't an opponent that he could defeat with one strike. Given Yi Jiang's understanding of the sword, he was now confident that he could defeat anyone below the Golden Core stage with one strike. But even though he exclaimed in his heart that Lotus Sun was very strong, Yi Jiang still hated the outcome of this match to the bone. Thus, during the collision, Yi Jiang folded his arms and said something very conceited that touched everyone's eardrums. Yi Jiang, Yi Jiang, am invincible below the Golden Core stage. Wang Ling, invincible below the Golden Core stage. Many people felt uncomfortable when they heard this, but they couldn't refute it. To be able to master the power of sword intent resonance at such a young age, it wasn't an exaggeration at all to say that he was invincible below the Golden Core stage. Classmate Sun, you're very strong, but not enough to deal with me. Yi Jiang had his arms crossed all this time as he maintained his lofty posture. As the sword intent collided, Yi Jiang just swept his gaze over her, and she immediately felt immense pressure. It was as if Apollo, the god of the sun, was driving a golden divine car at 280 kilometers per hour. Yi Jiang had actually separated a massive sword intent from his eyes. Not good. Lotus Sun frowned slightly. She couldn't choose to meet this powerful sword intent head-on, so she promptly separated a portion of Mysterious C's sword intent to block it, while her main body chose to withdraw and evade the attack. In the next moment, a shocking scene unfolded. Mysterious C's sword intent actually couldn't withstand Yang Li's ferocious attack at all, and in the collision, it actually shattered on the spot. When everyone came back to their senses, they saw a broken blue spirit sword at Lotus Sun's feet. All that was left of the sword was the hilt. A broken sword is a great taboo for a swordsman. Classmate Sun, it's time for you to admit defeat. Yi Jiang's lips curled as he looked at Lotus Sunday. Lotus Sun carefully picked up the fragments on the ground one by one and held them in her hands, her eyes filled with deep heartache. You've worked hard, are you talking to your sword spirit? If the sword is broken, the sword spirit won't be able to live for long, Yi Jiang said. Thank you for the reminder, classmate E. This Mysterious C is indeed broken, but who told you? I only have one Mysterious C. As soon as she said this, the sword intent in Lotus Sun's body surged again, and the aura of the Mysterious C, which had originally been destroyed, was revived once more. Your Mysterious C, that's right, my Mysterious C isn't dead. I've never shown this to anyone before. Lotus Sun smiled slightly. The so-called Mysterious C doesn't just represent a spirit sword. It's actually a girl group. One just broke, and I still have 47. And each one has a sword spirit. Everyone. Chapter 12:06. As Lotus Sun took out the second mysterious sea in front of everyone and once again performed the human sword unity technique, all the onlookers sucked in a breath of cold air. It seemed that this wasn't just a contest between water and fire, but also a contest between money. A headmaster in the command center was shocked by Lotus Sun's heroism. Is this a twin sword spirit? No, I'm guessing it's a twin sword spirit plus a clone sword spirit. Given Huaguo Water Curtain Group's wealth, it shouldn't be difficult for them to entrust Spirit Sword Company to duplicate spirit swords and sword spirits. That is to say, of these 48 mysterious seas, student Lotus Sun has 2 original spirit swords, and the other 46 are clones. Then it looks like this one is also a clone. That's right. Student Lotus Sun won't take out her original spirit swords lightly unless she has no other choice. Many headmasters could tell at a glance that the first and second mysterious seas that Lotus Sun had just taken out were both clones. Although the clone sword spirit was created based on the original spirit, there was in fact still a certain difference in their overall attributes, which was why the clone sword had broken so easily. The suspense in the second round of the duel was still unresolved. Yi Jiang's claim that he was invincible below the Golden Core stage sounded arrogant and conceited, but he indeed had the capital to brag. But Lotus Sun's battle strength wasn't weak below the Golden Core stage. It could be said that this was a contest between Sword God Academy's Yi Jiang and number 60 High School's Lotus Sun, which represented the top level of the current younger generation of cultivators. Many people did not expect such an exciting battle to take place. The principals in the command center all secretly regretted not starting a bet earlier. The purpose of starting a bet was not for money. The principals were betting on their ability to read people. If anyone could correctly guess the outcome of the battle, they would be able to use it as a topic of conversation in the future. Who do you think will win? At that moment, old Huang, who was sitting at the very front, chuckled. He could sense that the headmasters behind him couldn't take it anymore. But there were clear rules about starting a bet, and it actually wasn't allowed in terms of procedures and regulations. Thus, old Huang thought of an excuse. Anyone who guesses correctly will be rewarded. Old Huang's reward. At that moment, a number of headmasters had interested expressions on their faces. Everyone was well aware of old Huang's identity, so naturally, the reward he would give would not be an ordinary item. Some headmasters had heard that old Huang had refined many pills in the stalactite cave over the years, so they had even more expectations for this reward. If the prize was an elixir, then it would be a huge profit. Teacher, if I may be so bold as to ask, what is the reward? President Qi narrowed his eyes and smiled. A round thing, old Huang replied. After hearing old Huang's description, all the principals were even more certain that the prize was a pill. Hence, they began to express their opinions one after another. In order to make it easier for President Qi to tabulate the results, all the headmasters set up a group chat face-to-face and posted their views on the battle in text. Once the results were out, it would be clear who would get the prize. Yi Jiang has comprehended the sword will resonance at such a young age. This kid's swordsmanship is extraordinary. Moreover, when I watched him fight, he was neither arrogant nor rash. His thoughts were clear, and even his explosive power was extremely strong. If student Lotus Sun hadn't sacrificed her spirit sword just now, I'm afraid she would have already triggered the golden light barrier. So what if you have explosive power? As the saying goes, a man can do it 9 times in one night. His explosive power is also very strong, but in the end, there's a limit to it. I don't believe that he can last so long with such explosive power. He was able to break one of student Lotus Sun's spirit swords, and she still has 47 of them. What are you going to use to fight her? I bet student Lotus Sun will win. On this side, the headmasters began to argue fiercely about the outcome of the second round of the duel. The heat on the real arena was even more intense than that of the headmasters in the command center. Zhu Hanyun was defeated. He sat cross-legged next to Super Chin, bruises all over his body. Although he looked badly injured, they were just superficial wounds. Earlier, the Special Forces teacher had wanted to take Zhu Hanyun away from the scene for treatment, but Nan Yishio had politely refused. After Zhu Hanyun's repeated pleas, the command center finally agreed to let him stay on the scene. Of course, Zhu Hanyun couldn't cause trouble, or the consequences would be very serious. Zhu Hanyun had already thought it through. If he couldn't observe and learn from this pinnacle duel below the Golden Core stage, he would probably regret it for the rest of his life. Zhu Hanyun smiled and asked Super Chin next to him, "Who do you think will win?" "I'll always support student Lotus Sun." Super Chen's expression was very relaxed. "Can't you analyze it from your personal feelings?" "I think Yi Jiang will win." The corners of Zhu Hanyun's mouth twitched. He started to regret asking Super Chin this question. He then turned to look at Nan Yishio next to him. "Brother Nan, what do you think?" There was clearly no point in asking the people from number 60 high in this situation. Even if they knew that Yi Jiang was very strong, they would still choose to support their captain. "I think Yi Jiang will win." Great minds think alike. Their gazes met, and Zhu Hanyun immediately analyzed the next match. "If Yi Jiang advances to the next round, there's a high chance that you'll fight him." "Ha, if I lose to Yi Jiang, I'll accept it wholeheartedly." Nan Yishio smiled bitterly. On the side, Super Chin wasn't happy when he heard this. What did he mean by, "If Yi Jiang advances to the next round, there's a high chance that Nan Yishio will fight him"? Wasn't that assuming that Wang Ling had already lost to Nan Yishio? Thus, a lot of people from number 60 high cast disdainful looks at him. As the president of Wang Ling's fan club, Xia Ming was the first to step forward. "Student Nan Yishio is a little overconfident. Why do you assume that student Wang Ling will lose to you?" Nan Yishio chuckled. To be honest, the gap in their battle strength is indeed very obvious. Super Chin also chuckled. Then to be honest, the gap in luck is also very obvious. Our school's mascot lives up to his reputation, I don't think you'll win. These were sincere words from the bottom of Super Chen's heart, and didn't contain any utilitarian elements. For some reason, from the moment Nan Yishio had drawn his match against Wang Ling, Super Chen had felt at ease. He felt that if it was Wang Ling, there might be a chance that he could win by a surprise move. Although, as Nan Yishio said, there might really be a gap in their battle strength, Super Chen was willing to believe in Wang Ling. At this point in the argument, after Lotus Sun switched to a clone spirit sword, the battle with Yi Jiang finally resumed. Since the other party could freely use sword intent in any part of his body, it was clear that he would be the one to suffer in a direct confrontation. At that moment, Lotus Sun changed her way of thinking. The girl was still dressed in a gorgeous azure blue dress. With a soft cry, she spread out her left hand, and another azure spirit sword appeared in her hand. This was the third mysterious sea. She can even use two swords. On the other side of the battle, Yi Jiang's pupils contracted slightly. In his view, even if Lotus Sun used two swords, it wouldn't be of any use. One more sword meant one more sword to break. In Yi Jiang's eyes, this clone mysterious sea was as brittle as a piece of ice. Chapter 1207. Yi Jiang crossed his arms, a proud and aloof expression in his eyes. The moment Lotus Sun stood still, an invisible wave spread out from Yi Jiang's body. When Lotus Sun slashed out with Mysterious Sea's sword Qi, she realized that it actually couldn't pierce the defense of this Qi membrane around Yi Jiang. The other party had actually used the power of the resonance of sword intent on his Qi, which he then used to build a barrier with himself as the center, forming a 3-foot sword intent barrier that was like a Qi membrane. This barrier was extremely tough, and could block almost all close-range and flying spells. If they were unable to break through this layer of sword intent barrier, then all of their attacks would be like ice crashing into a raging flame, completely melting away. The situation was unfavorable for Lotus Sunday. Even if she brandished her two swords and could control two mysterious seas at the same time, compared with Yang Li's ferocious attack, she was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. Yi Jiang was indeed a very strong opponent. It had been a long time since Lotus Sun had encountered a strong enemy below the Golden Core stage. Although the situation looked difficult, the girl's expression from beginning to end didn't show the slightest hint of fear. She wasn't just the captain of number 60 High's delegation, but also the future heir to Huaguo Water Curtain Group. Countless experts in the cultivation world were watching this match. If she lost this fight, it might affect the group's stock market to some extent. This was the so-called pressure of the rich. The school's honor and the family's honor, the double pressure now rested on Lotus Sun's shoulders. The next moment, she brandished the two swords in her hands and drew beautiful arcs in the air. For a moment, everyone's minds were in turmoil, and many of them realized for the first time that this girl actually had an outstanding foundation in martial arts. She brandished her swords like a graceful swan, or like she was dancing a noble waltz. Finally, as she spun rapidly, mysterious seas gave off the aura of the boundless ocean, and a waterspout infused with sword intent moved at high speed in Yi Jiang's direction. Countless gravel on the ground was sucked up by the waterspout, and the scene was like the descent of a disaster with earth-shattering momentum. Seeing this, Yi Jiang didn't hold back at all. With a backhand move and Yang Li's Apollo chariot, he didn't give Lotus Sun any chance at all. The golden flaming chariot faced the waterspout with the momentum of a tempestuous wave, and everyone around, including the headmasters, marveled at the sight. Even a battle between Golden Core cultivators might not be able to reach this level. It was hard to imagine that this was a duel between Foundation establishment cultivators. I'm afraid this is a fight between deities below the Golden Core stage. I already said that children nowadays are overnourished. They haven't even reached the Gold Core stage, yet they already have such psionic energy. Logically speaking, only cultivators above the Golden Core stage who possess sufficient spiritual energy can cast a level 3 spell. The two of them are actually using tier 3 spells to clash against each other. This is a little too ridiculous. A headmaster was astonished. Thinking back to the spiritual energy I possessed when I was in the building foundation stage, being able to release level 2 spiritual energy was already considered excellent. The children nowadays are too well nourished. It seems that the standards of the cult of future generations will have to be raised. The chariot collided with the waterspout, causing a huge explosion. The surrounding spectators were unlucky, and many of them were sent flying by the shockwave. They could only blame themselves for being too close. Although they wanted to save some spiritual power, they couldn't afford to set up a protective barrier at this moment. Tang Jingze, Hero Gua, and Li Yuyue reacted quickly and used a protective barrier to withstand the impact. Yan Xiaochun used the innate advantage of the Titan art to stay where she was. Although she wasn't sent flying by the shockwave, she was only slightly injured because she was too close to the explosion. She was already very lucky that she hadn't triggered the protective golden light. The most unlucky one was Four Eyes from South Sea Sky. His reaction speed was too slow, and he was too close to the explosion. He hadn't been able to dodge in time, and had been forced to activate the protective golden talisman. I knew it was good to be classmate Wang Ling's fan. I didn't even have to do anything, and I already won. Xia Ming was very excited. Wang Ling, Xia Ming had already realized that Yi Jiang and Lotus Sun might make a big move in the second round of attacks, so he had kept a certain distance from them before they started fighting, so he hadn't been affected by any of the shockwaves. So to sum up, the most sullen people were still the two from South Sea Sky, Nan Yishio and Four Eyes. Although Four Eyes' strength was mediocre, he could still be considered a fighting force. This author hadn't even bothered to give him a name, and now he had actually become cannon fodder. Now, Nan Yishio was even more stressed. But Nan Yishio was still confident that he could defeat Wang Ling. As for Wang Ling, while everyone was quickly reacting to the explosion in front of them, Wang Ling's idea was to take advantage of the shockwaves from the explosion to trigger the protective golden talisman and withdraw from this boring match as soon as possible. Thus, Wang Ling stood motionless on the spot. As long as he could trigger the protective golden talisman, he would be able to rest early and eat crispy noodle snacks. While this was a good plan, it couldn't stop Lotus Sun from actually paying attention to Wang Ling while fighting Yi Jiang. Seeing that Wang Ling was about to be hit by the shockwaves, Lotus Sun made a prompt decision to throw out another clone Mysterious Sea to help Wang Ling withstand the shockwaves. After that, Lotus Sun was actually a little embarrassed. Classmate Wang Ling. You don't have to thank me. It was the captain's responsibility to protect his team members. Wang Ling, under everyone's horrified gazes, this chariot versus waterspout drama finally ended in a draw. Lotus Sun had sacrificed a second clone Mysterious Sea, but her expression didn't change at all. The sword spirits of the clone swords were actually emotionless artificial machines. Apart from obeying Lotus Sun's orders, they didn't have any extra emotions. The ones who truly had feelings for Lotus Sun were the twin sword spirits of the original body. But given the current situation, Lotus Sun still didn't seem to have any intention of releasing her true dual sacred sword spirits. Unless the clone swords were completely used up, the twin sword spirits wouldn't go into battle so easily. Yi Jiang naturally noticed this. Classmate Lotus Sun, your clone swords are the most powerful I've ever seen. But you have to understand that the power of the clone swords is limited. Your level 3 spell is very powerful, but without the support of the twin sword spirits, there's no way you can fight me. At this point in the battle, Yi Jiang felt that the girl in front of him still hadn't realized the gap between their battle strengths, and he felt that he could already unleash more power. His foster father and Shifu had previously told him that it was best not to use this move unless it was absolutely necessary, otherwise it would be easy to expose certain things. But now, with so many people watching the match, Yi Jiang already felt that he couldn't care less. He enjoyed the shocked and adoring gazes of the people around him, and the atmosphere of this showdown between the strongest cultivators below the Golden Core stage. In the next moment, Yi Jiang's aura surged again, and strands of golden-red sword chi began to boil on the surface of his body. Even his hair was dyed a dazzling gold like the sun. This person had actually even mastered General Yi's boundless sword Dao. At that moment, Wang Ling's eyebrows finally twitched slightly. He finally understood why Yi Jiang was confident that he was invincible below the Golden Core stage. With the boundless sword Dao, a secret technique that shouldn't be mastered by a foundation establishment cultivator, Yi Jiang could naturally call himself invincible. But this also meant that Lotus Sun was in danger. Wang Ling had personally experienced the power of the boundless sword Dao when he had watched General Yi and the head of state face off. Given the power of that sword chi, Lotus Sun might be seriously injured even with the protective golden light. Looking at the scene in front of him, Wang Ling sighed inwardly. He hadn't wanted to make a move. But now, it seemed that he needed to help Lotus Sun in secret. The appearance of the boundless sword Dao had already broken the balance a little. As an expert in the field of checks and balances and a master of average scores, the moment Wang Ling saw this scene, he was already thinking of ways to help Lotus Sunday. Chapter 1208. The moment Yi Jiang unleashed boundless sword Dao, the hearts of Lotus Sun's supporters turned cold. Many headmasters rubbed their eyes to make sure they weren't seeing things. A foundation establishment kid had actually learned Blademaster's boundless sword Dao. No wonder he could become General Yi's adopted son. This kind of swordsmanship talent was truly rare in the world. I'm afraid student Lotus Sun is going to lose. Looking at the scene in front of them, several headmasters immediately felt that the outcome was a foregone conclusion. Boundless sword Dao was a technique that could infinitely activate a swordsman's limitless potential. Even though Yi Jiang had only cultivated it to a rudimentary level, it was still frightening. His surging sword chi and surging aura had the power of empty crushing down on them, and when it erupted, several people were instantly forced to activate their protective golden talismans. Super Chen, who had already been injured, was affected and directly eliminated. On the other side, the girl duo, Yan Xiaochun and Li Yuyue, were even worse off. They had clearly kept their distance from the battlefield, but were still affected by the impact and had been forced to activate their golden talismans. How could this be? seeing his only remaining junior sister eliminated, Zhu Hanyun almost fainted on the spot. With the support of boundless sword Dao, the power of the resonance of sword intent was further amplified. In other words, at that moment, the sword qi around Yi Jiang had also greatly increased. The sword barrier that had originally been only a few feet wide had expanded to dozens of feet, and he was now able to launch an indiscriminate attack on the spot. Fortunately, Lotus Sun reacted quickly and sacrificed 3 clone swords to protect the 3 boys closest to her. Li Yuyue was the only one she couldn't protect, because she was too far away and Lotus Sun didn't have time to sacrifice her swords to protect herself. As for Nan Yixio and Tang Jingze, they reacted quickly and were very smart. When they saw that something was wrong, they immediately used their homemade levitation talismans to save their lives. The fluctuations of sword qi were certainly frightening, but in the end, they were affecting the ground. As long as they kept a certain distance from the ground, they could avoid the impact of the shock wave. Nan Yixio still remembered his duel with Wang Ling. It was just a mere levitation talisman. If he used it, then so be it. When the time came, as long as he beat Wang Ling, even if he couldn't beat Yi Jiang, he could at least win second place for South Sea Sky High School. Student Lotus Sun has already used up 5 clone swords. Tang Jingze's expression was calm as he sighed in his heart at Huaguo Water Curtain Group's financial resources. AI, classmate Wang Ling really has a good life. But so what? You'll still lose to me in the end. Although the consumption of the clone sword seemed easy, in reality, the value of each clone sword was extremely high. Sacrificing her sword to protect her teammate was enough to prove her determination in the competition. Therefore, even though the outcome of this battle seemed to have been decided in the eyes of the outside world, in Tang Jingze's eyes, it was still hard to say who would win or lose. The most important reason was, although Yi Jiang had used the amplification power of his boundless sword Dao to eliminate a few people, in the end, it was still Lotus Sun who was fighting him. At such a close distance, Lotus Sun had only used her sword to protect her teammates, but hadn't used the clone sword on herself. In other words, Lotus Sun had withstood the pressure of the sword qi. Why did this happen? For a moment, many people fell into deep thought. In the end, it was because of the nature of the sword spirits. It was true that Yi Jiang's Li Yang's sword intent was fierce, but Lotus Sun's mysterious sea was a gentle water sword spirit. It had the power to move 1,000 caddies with little effort. When her fist struck the surface of the water, it might cause ripples, but it might not be able to harm the water. After becoming one with the sword, Mysterious Sea had attached itself to the girl's body, and the azure dress it had transformed into was the best protective halo. Lotus Sun's slender body swayed slightly. Although Yi Jiang's sword intent hadn't triggered her protective golden talisman, it had still caused her internal injuries. The girl raised her hand to wipe the blood from the corner of her mouth, her expression full of joy. A showdown between geniuses was bound to be one in which heroes appreciated each other, especially when neither side was willing to admit defeat, which made the match even more interesting to watch. Under countless gazes, Lotus Sun took a deep breath. She then unfurled her sleeves, and one clone Mysterious Sea after another was taken out of her sword's spirit space. When the remaining 40 clone Mysterious Sea hovered around Lotus Sun, everyone suddenly understood her strategy. Since quality couldn't be guaranteed, then she would use quantity to win. This was undoubtedly a huge gamble. However, everyone was still skeptical about whether the girl had the ability to manipulate 40 spirit swords at the same time. Wang Ling was watching in the dark. If he was going to make a move, he couldn't make it too obvious. The boundless sword Dao was too strong. Given the gap in their battle strength, if he helped Lotus Sun turn the situation around, she would definitely be questioned. What he needed to do was to adapt to the situation, wait for the right opportunity, and then operate under the table. While protecting Lotus Sun, he would do his best to ensure that the two of them fought to a draw. This was the best of both worlds he could think of. Just manipulating 40 spirit swords would consume a huge amount of spirit energy and mental strength. Wang Ling could already see that Lotus Sun's forehead was steaming, which was a sign that her mental strength was too concentrated. It was like the overheating effect of a computer running multiple programs at the same time. Once it reached a state where it couldn't bear the load, it was bound to lag. That would be the time for Yi Jiang to subdue the enemy. Hence, a lot of people had been skeptical about whether Lotus Sun could truly control the swords at the start. But reality proved that a genius's ability to control them was beyond everyone's imagination. In the next moment, the 40-cloned mysterious sea turned into a meteor shower of swords that soared into the sky, dragging brilliant rainbows behind them. In the air, they arranged themselves in a sword array according to Lotus Sun's will, constantly changing positions as they bombarded Yi Jiang with overwhelming force. Yi Jiang's arms were crossed the whole time, and he maintained a cold and aloof posture. The Yangli sword spirit behind him emitted a holy light like that of the bright sun, which scorched the surrounding air. The rising temperature made everyone nearby feel like the air was boiling hot. The heat could be felt from a long distance away, and the temperature at the center was absolutely frighteningly high. "Is he trying to raise the temperature to melt those clone mysterious sea swords?" someone said. While the temperature at the center was extremely high, it was still a fool's dream to think that he could melt the clone swords. Yi Jiang was like a small sun, but he was never able to reach the temperature of a true sun. So the other party's real goal definitely wasn't to melt the mysterious sea swords, but to make Lotus Sun overload herself in advance. In order to manipulate the 40 spirit swords, Lotus Sun's body temperature had already risen. As long as Yi Jiang added a little more firewood, she would definitely overload herself. Although such a method was shameless, it could still be regarded as a safe strategy and tactic. It was impossible for Lotus Sun not to see through this crafty plan. She knew that she couldn't drag it out any longer. This wave of 40 mysterious sea swords was her final all-out attack. 5-card stud. In the end, such a desperate effort would naturally result in both sides suffering. And it was very obvious that Lotus Sun's injuries would be even more serious. When Wang Ling made a battle simulation based on the scene in front of him, he could already see the result. This couldn't go on. And so, the moment Lotus Sun's 40 clone mysterious sea swords were about to collide with Yi Jiang, he switched to his king's eye. In the space of a single breath, time in the entire universe paused for a brief moment. During this pause, he did 3 things. The first was to use a cooling spell to cool down Lotus Sun's body. The second was to adjust the positions of the 40 cloned mysterious sea swords. The third was to aim some of the swords at Yi Jiang's, but this sword chi barrier seemed flawless, but in fact, it also had a weak point. And Yi Jiang's weak point was this tailbone. Chapter 1209. Wang Ling didn't use the universal time stop ability very often. He had comprehended this ability when he was 12 years old. The reason he didn't use it often was that it was a huge burden on the king's eye. The main damage was temporary dryness of the eyes, which required several drops of eye drops to recover. The key was that after using it, there would also be some problems with his vision. Time would pause for 1 second, and the degree would temporarily increase by 10 degrees. Thus, he would do his best to finish what he had to do while time was paused. After everything was set up, he withdrew his time stop power. Victory or defeat in a battle often depended on the details. When the wheel of time started to roll again, there was a clear look of astonishment on Yi Jiang's face. When on Earth? He could already feel 4 clone mysterious seas aimed at his butt. They clearly hadn't been there before. He didn't know when they had suddenly appeared behind him. His tailbone was his life gate, and his butt was the weakest part of the sword chi barrier. He hadn't expected Lotus Sun to be able to do this in such a tense moment. Not only had she seen through his life gate, she had even launched an extremely precise attack. The distance was too short, and it was already too late to rebuild his defense. At the last moment, as the 4 clone mysterious seas pierced through his rear defense, Yi Jiang's life gate was broken. Like a broken balloon, the sword chi all over his body poured out in torrents with the momentum of a landslide and a tsunami. For a moment, it formed a terrifying wave of sword intent that broke the dam in all directions. Seeing that the situation wasn't good, Lotus Sun had the rest of the clone Mysterious Seas protect all the members of number 60 high school, while she alone took the lead. But the power of the wave of sword intent was too strong, and her clone Mysterious Seas shattered like dominoes. When the last clone Mysterious Sea shattered, Lotus Sun's entire body was sent flying by the wave of sword intent. Almost at the same time, Yang and Lotus Sun's protective golden talismans were triggered, and they perished together. It's actually a draw. A lot of people looked at this scene in disbelief. All the headmasters in the command center were deathly silent. Yang had already used a killer move like Boundless Sword Dao, but he had still managed to tie with Lotus Sunday. The headmasters who had been on Yang's side earlier all lowered their heads and fell silent. This was indeed a showdown at the peak of the Golden Core stage, and Yang was terrifyingly strong. When the Limitless Sword Dao was activated, he could even fight against a Golden Core cultivator. And Lotus Sun's strategic planning and insight were even more astonishing. Even when she was at a disadvantage, she could still accurately find an opportunity to reverse the situation. Although the final result was a draw, in fact, in the eyes of many principals present, the winner was very obvious. After being sent flying, Lotus Sun fell into a coma. The protective golden talisman would only automatically activate when a person's life was in danger. Just now, the girl had shielded the front on her own to protect the other people from number 60 high, and had relied on the remaining mysterious cloning sea to disperse the enormous pressure brought on by the tide of sword intent. However, in the end, he still failed to protect his golden protective talisman. After secretly examining Lotus Sun, Wang Ling heaved a secret sigh of relief. Although he had fallen into a coma, his injuries were not serious. He had only suffered some minor internal injuries. On the other hand, Yang was the one who really needed to be concerned about. If Lotus Sun had been standing on the edge of the storm of surging sword intent just now, then Yang was the person at the center of the storm. A large amount of sword intent had poured out of his tailbone, causing his protective golden talisman to activate, and he had fallen to the ground with his butt sticking up in the air. His posture was too graceful, and the scene was a mess, compared with the girl who had fallen like a water lily. Yang on the other side was more like a chrysanthemum in full bloom. Your chrysanthemum is broken, the ground is covered in wounds, your smile is already yellow. Hero Guo couldn't help sighing. This was the worst draw he had ever seen. It was clearly a draw, but it looked like Lotus Sun had won a complete victory. The way she had fallen was too different. Furthermore, Yang's current situation was the kind that couldn't be broadcasted without mosaics. Members of the resident special forces quickly rushed over to check on Yang's initial injuries. They saw his snow-white butt sticking up in the air and half his head buried in the ground. The rescue team first exposed Yang's face, but didn't move him from his embarrassing position, because they weren't sure if Yang's bones were fractured. If there were internal fractures, casually turning him over at this time could cause him a second injury. Has the scene been cut off? It has. That's too pitiful, it's clearly a draw. Stop talking, let's examine him first. The team members used their magic treasures to conduct a comprehensive appraisal and examination of Yang's injuries. His upper body is basically fine, but his lower body is a little tragic. His pelvis and leg bones are fractured. Also, his anus is ruptured. The rescue team member spoke very quietly, but Super Chin still heard him. Standing on the side, Super Chin smiled. Oh, it's ruptured. Then why isn't there any blood? As soon as he said this, blood sprayed out of Yang's butt like a fountain. Seeing this, the rescue team member sighed in his heart. When a landslide happened, no blood was innocent. Roughly 10 minutes later, the scene returned to normal, and Yang and Lotus Sun were both picked up by members of the special forces. Thus, only Tang Jingze, Hero Guo, Nan Yixio, and Wang Ling were left. Lotus Sun was number 60 high school's biggest backer. Being eliminated along with Yang was the most ideal result that Nan Yixio could think of. In terms of overall combat strength, Nan Yixio was absolutely confident that he could win against the remaining 3 people. After all, he was the captain of South Sea Sky High. The only one who might be a little harder to deal with was number 59 High School's Tang Jingze, but so what? That Hero Guo wasn't a pushover. After the fight between Tang Jingze and Hero Guo, no matter who won, the winner would definitely suffer losses. But his fight with Wang Ling would be effortless. Thus, before the third round of the match began, Nan Yixio looked at Wang Ling as if victory was already in his grasp. "Classmate Wang Ling, it's our turn in the next round. Do you have anything to say?" Wang Ling. Preparation time passed quickly, and the duel between Nan Yixio and Wang Ling officially began. After the third round of immortals fighting below the Golden Core stage, this duel seemed a little dull. South Sea Sky High was a school famous for its perception-type magic, so no one expected Nan Yixio to be able to show off in battle. As for Wang Ling on the other side, he was just a mascot, and there didn't seem to be much to talk about. Thus, despite everyone's pessimism, Wang Ling calmly put his hands in the pockets of his school pants and unhurriedly walked onto the duel stage. He was pondering a very serious question. What kind of spell could he use to not kill Nan Yixio and still win this match in a low-key manner? Chapter 12:10. Nan Yixio's failure was unexpected, but reasonable. When they saw the mushroom cloud explode, all the headmasters in the command center couldn't help looking at number 60 High's spicy man. From the very beginning, this headmaster Chen from number 60 High School had already made clear plans for Nan Yixio. "Thank you, everyone. Huaguo Water Curtain Group had already invested in the construction of our school's playground, and construction would start in the near future. So, let's take a discount. I hope that everyone who has just made a promise will not go back on their word." Headmaster Chen smiled lightly. Although he was looked down upon by the surrounding headmasters, he was undoubtedly the biggest winner in this situation. He did not want Bai Lian. The headmasters were furious, but they didn't dare say anything. The most important thing was that Old Huang and President Qi were present as witnesses, so they had no choice but to fulfill their promise back then. Since he had lost, there was no harm in being more magnanimous. Otherwise, he would be labeled as someone who did not keep his word. As for the reward that Old Huang had mentioned earlier, that round object piqued the curiosity of many people. "Do you still remember Old Huang's promise?" Headmaster Chen didn't stand on ceremony. "Yes, I still have that round thing with me." Under everyone's curious gaze, Old Huang took out a shiny object and tossed it to Headmaster Chen. "Coins. An ancient coin. I found it while I was cultivating in the stalactite cave." "What history?" someone asked. "I'm not sure." Old Huang shook his head. "What does that imply?" "Go to Bilibili and pay for the Immortal King anime." On the other side of the scene, Nan Yixio walked out of the dust caused by the explosion. He was covered in dust and dirt. The explosion of the talisman was just right. The light film triggered by the protective golden light protected his body very well. He didn't lose an arm or leg. However, the outcome was hard for Nan Yixio to accept. He couldn't believe that he had lost to a mascot. Obviously, he hadn't even exchanged one move with Wang Ling, and he had already lost just like that. At this point, number 60 High's victory seemed certain. Number 60 High still had Hero Guo, Wang Ling, and Xia Ming on the field. On the other side, only number 59 High School's Tang Jingze was left. Unless Tang Jingze could mount a counterattack and achieve a 1-on-3, number 60 High's victory was already set in stone. 1 against 3, how could it be easy? Even if he could win one round, Tang Jingze wouldn't be able to endure the physical exhaustion of taking turns to fight. Just as Hero Guo was warming up and planning to fight Tang Jingze, he heard Tang Jingze say, "Well, I admit defeat. Number 60 High won this match." Right now, it was a meaningless battle. Tang Jingze felt that even if he fought, he might not be able to win. He might as well save some strength and pick up second place. This choice might seem a little cowardly, but it was in fact a wise one. The main thing was that number 59 High School's team was in a more desperate situation. As the team leader, if Tang Jingze was injured at this time, everyone in number 59 high school would have to be carried back. You're giving up. Hero Guo couldn't believe that Tang Jingze would actually make such a decision. This is my decision. And the truth was that even if I won the next 3 matches, my overall score might not be higher than number 60 highs. Otherwise, I would definitely give it my all. Tang Jingze's voice was very heavy. He also wanted to finish the last match, but the situation in front of him was that he would lose sooner or later. Number 59 high school's overall score wasn't high to begin with. Even if they won 3 matches, there would still be a gap between them and number 60 high school. The nature of the national competition was based on a point system. Those who survived to the end would get bonus points, but they might not necessarily be the winner. If their overall score in the first few days was high enough, it was still possible for them to turn defeat into victory. How do you know your overall score isn't as high as ours? Hero Guo was stunned. I caught a teacher from the special forces on patrol earlier and asked him about the situation in each team. Tang Jingze sighed as he spoke. Your number 60 high school's overall score is very high. Just the bonus points for the essay alone are over 300 points. Bonus points for the essay? Hero Guo was stunned. It's the diary for the body technique competition. Everyone can decide whether or not they want to write the essay on the topic. Student Wang Ling's essay called Substitute got more than 200 points. After Tang Jingze said this, everyone present, including Wang Ling and all the headmasters in the command center, were shocked. All of them had incredulous expressions on their faces. The hell? More than 200 points for an essay. What the F***K was there left to play? The main reason why Wang Ling was astonished was because he hadn't written the essay at all. He had been fighting with Wang Ying while he had been writing the essay. So this essay had been written by his clone, Crispy Noodles. Although Wang Ling had known early on that Crispy Noodles was an honest person, he had never thought that he would actually be able to write an essay with more than 200 points. At that moment, Wang Ling sucked in a cold breath. He felt more and more gazes focus on him, and cold sweat instantly soaked his back. Thus, only Tang Jingze was left sighing. As a new fan of Wang Ling, his admiration for Wang Ling at that moment was even greater than before he had participated in the competition. Tang Jingze, student Wang Ling, as expected of you. You got first place with your essay. Wang Ling, on the other side, the headmasters in the command center were having none of it. More than 200 points for an essay. What kind of essay could be so attractive? Shady. Blatant shady business. I strongly demand that this essay be made public for everyone to appreciate. Many headmasters openly protested. Calm down, everyone, I've already ordered for the essays to be shown. All the essays written by the students during the competition have been cross-evaluated and graded by gold medal Chinese teachers selected from the National Database of Outstanding Teachers. The system will randomly select the teachers, so it stands to reason that there shouldn't be any shady business, President Qi said. Dozens of seconds later, Wang Ling's substitute essay written by Crispy Noodles was publicly displayed on the screen in the background library. What greeted their eyes was a large number of wavy underlined lines that the Chinese teacher had helped to annotate. All the headmasters were utterly shocked. The entire essay was actually full of golden lines. When a speck of dust falls on a man's head, it becomes a mountain. Nature's warning is clearly deafening, but we pretend to be deaf and dumb, go with the flow, and even add fuel to the fire. We think we dominate the world and can be the masters, but we don't know who has become whose substitute. You can't sing winter as the beginning of spring. Some people are already buried in winter, and some people should be buried in winter. Seeing this, all the headmasters were stupefied. They were stunned by Wang Ling's outstanding writing style and the profound philosophical meaning behind his words. Although some of them didn't understand the deeper meaning expressed inside, they felt that it was very impressive. P.S. This chapter is free to read. 3 of the 4 sentences at the end are quotes from a Chinese teacher's opening speech at Chengdu No. 7 High School. Article: This screen may change fate. Chapter 12:11. On Sunday, November 22nd, the 9th day of the National Cultivation School Body Technique Competition, students from hundreds of schools all over the country gathered in neat square formations in the square of 9 Dragon Mountain Base. It could be seen that compared to the beginning, the delegations sent by each school were basically fewer people. Some students who suffered from fractures or other more serious injuries during the competition could be exempted from participating in the closing ceremony after being reported by the teacher leading the team. Yi Jiang and Lotus Sun hadn't come. In fact, Lotus Sun had already woken up earlier, but that old man's son from Huaguo Water Curtain Group had been worried, and had taken her back overnight for a more detailed examination. All in all, this national body technique competition finally drew to a close with number 60 High's one-sided team performance. A lot of people sighed in their hearts at the dramatic nature of the competition. At the same time, a lot of people had pent-up resentment in their hearts. Before the competition had started, no one had thought that number 60 High would end up with a big lead over the other teams in the form of bonus points for essays. What happened to the body technique exchange competition? Wang Ling thought of the spirit sword competition with number 59 high school. They hadn't had many opportunities to display their spirit swords at all, and no one had expected the same mistake to repeat itself in the national body technique competition this time. As expected, life was a circle. But it wasn't as if there hadn't been any exciting fights in the competition. For example, the showdown between Yi Jiang and Lotus Sun at the peak of the Golden Core stage could be taken out and scrutinized again and again. On the sports field, Wang Ling looked around out of the corner of his eye and noticed that a lot of people were watching him. He knew in his heart that the reason he was the focus of so much attention wasn't because of his battle with Nan Yishou, but because of the essay written by his real clone, Crispy Noodles, after the competition which had made him popular. Who knew things would turn out like this? Wang Ling sighed helplessly. On the way back to Songhai City on the air Immortal Warship, Wang Ling was worried about one thing, and that was whether Father Wang would find an excuse to dock his allowance. He had stirred up too much trouble in this national competition, and now the whole school, no, the whole alliance of 10,000 schools knew that he was a good writer. Fortunately, Audiobook knew that Wang Ling had always liked to keep a low profile and didn't like to draw attention to himself. Thus, Audiobook had already spread the word that Wang Ling's composition this time was just a flash in the pan. When it came to writing an essay, even if there were no mistakes in the choice of words and sentences, it was still largely dependent on inspiration and luck. A person could not guarantee that he would always be able to write a golden sentence. Sometimes, when he suddenly thought of an awesome sentence, it was really just a sudden burst of inspiration. But he didn't know how many people would accept this. In any case, on the way back, everyone on the air Immortal Warship was filled with admiration for Wang Ling, especially Tang Jingze, who could almost be described as prostrating himself on the ground. Classmate Wang Ling, your composition is amazing. He's practically a modern-day Lu Shuren. Tang Jingze savored the sentences in the essay. What he liked the most was that sentence, a speck of dust from an era, when it falls on a person's head, is like a mountain. What kind of literary talent did he have to write such a great sentence? Incredible, incredible, no one was more excited than Wang Ling's language teacher, Guan Ziqian. Teacher Guan was a very low-key person, and usually didn't show his face. He was a very low-key office worker, and of course, there was nothing to say about his professional ability. All along, Guan Ziqian had been quite critical of Wang Ling's essays. It wasn't that Wang Ling's writing wasn't good, but that it was too plain. It was like a running account, and even the arguments were very old-fashioned. Wang Ling's essay could barely be considered above a passing grade, but this kind of essay would never get a high score. Thus, when this essay called Substitute was exposed in the national competition, Teacher Guan, who usually didn't say much in the group, actually directly at Ed Wang Ling, have you finally figured it out? Teacher Guan sent a facepalm emoji. Why do I feel like your essay is ghostwritten? Looking at Teacher Guan's question in the class group, Wang Ling thought about it for a long time before he trembled and replied with 2 words, no. To be honest, when he typed these 2 words on the screen, Wang Ling felt guilty. Seeing his reply, Teacher Guan didn't stand on ceremony, and directly retorted in the group. Then what's with your usual essays? Are you playing me? He hit the nail on the head. Wang Ling was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. Fortunately, Old Antique came out in time to smooth things over for Wang Ling. Student Wang Ling belongs to the category of contestants who occasionally perform well in competitions. Teacher Guan, don't be so calculative. Seeing Wang Ling's pitiful appearance as he held his phone, Old Antique's heart ached a little. Look at how scared this child is. Naturally, Teacher Guan was joking. His students had written such an excellent essay in a national competition, and he was very happy in his heart. He didn't type anymore, and directly praised Wang Ling in the group by voice message. Wang Ling, this is enough to show that you actually have literary talent and potential. I suspect that you were too nervous when you wrote your essay before because you didn't have enough time. If you were given enough time, even if you didn't perform as well as you did this time, you would at least be above average or even above average. Wang Ling still didn't have the guts to reply. The reason was that he felt that Teacher Guan was implying something. Sure enough, Teacher Guan's next words were, Wang Ling, there's a district essay competition in the middle of next month. Our language team teachers have been discussing for a long time who our school should send. How about you? Wang Ling, ? Teacher Guan, this time, it was all thanks to your essay that our school won the national competition. I don't think the other language team teachers have any objections. People are forced to be like this. Since you have potential, you should give yourself the right amount of pressure, understand? I'm doing this for your own good. Wang Ling, he knew things would turn out like this. It was already afternoon by the time he returned to number 60 High's sports field on the Sky Immortal warship. Wang Ling was about to go home when he heard someone shouting on the road, a speck of ashes of the times. A speck of ashes of the times. Wang Ling turned his head, and unexpectedly saw a passerby looking at him in high spirits. It was a middle-aged woman who was taking her daughter home from school. Judging from the girl's clothes, she was probably from Qingyun First Primary School, which was a cultivation primary school near number 60 High. Do you see that, big brother? A speck of ashes of the times. The middle-aged woman crouched down and said excitedly to her daughter. She had forgotten what Wang Ling's name was, but had still given him a unique nickname based on his essay. That was, a speck of ashes of the times. You have to learn from that big brother, his essays are very good. The middle-aged woman was very excited. Mom! That big brother is eating crispy noodle snacks. The little girl pointed at Wang Ling, let's go. Let's go buy it too. Eat it. Maybe your dog's hit essay will be as good as his. The middle-aged woman was even more excited. The corner of Wang Ling's mouth twitched. It looked like he was really famous this time. Even his noodles were starting to be snatched away. Chapter 12:12. Tomorrow was Monday, but Wang Ling didn't have to go to school. Headmaster Chen had taken into account the delegation's circumstances, and had given it 2 days off. After all, they had won glory for the school. Some of them hadn't fully recovered yet, and if they returned to school seamlessly, it would only cause more pressure. So on Monday and Tuesday, as long as they were members of number 60 High's delegation, they could complete their homework at home. The teachers would record the class videos and send them to the class group chat for the students to study at home. Contrary to Wang Ling's expectations, when he got home, Father Wang didn't scold him for the composition, but instead smiled. Wang Ling wasn't used to this. What are you afraid of? Sit down, I won't cut your pocket money. Father Wang patted the empty seat next to the sofa. Your composition is pretty good. He then started to praise Wang Ling. This shows that you still have our old Wang family's genes. Wang Ling, don't worry, I won't blame you. It's fine if you stand out. When it comes to composition, sometimes inspiration just flashes in the pan, and I'm afraid you can't control that well. Father Wang stared at Wang Ling and sked, then reached out to stroke his shoulder. Through this competition, I've gotten to know you better, son. Wang Ling still didn't dare speak, mainly because he felt that Father Wang's words seemed to have a deeper meaning. In the future, you can also learn to inherit my mantle. If you're not busy, why don't you help me write? I'll give you 10% of my royalties. Even 10% of my royalties is more than your pocket money. Wang Ling hadn't expected Father Wang to make such a request. Wasn't this just asking for a steal? Furthermore, everyone had their own specialties, and he really hadn't thought about writing a book. After staring blankly for a moment, Father Wang laughed and rubbed Wang Ling's head. I'm joking, I was just testing you. I still have this bit of professional integrity. Your writing skills are just like writing for an exam, your father doesn't care about that. Wang Ling sighed in his heart again. Being teased outside and teased by his father at home, he really couldn't live like this. After dinner, grenade-throwing senior immortal and Wang Ling spoke on the phone, mainly to talk about settling Li Huanran and Jiang Yingyue. Li Huanran would participate in the public hearing as the main witness of this incident. On the other hand, Jiang Yingyue had some clues about the fake numinous mother, so she also had some value. Grenade-throwing senior immortal actually wasn't calling Wang Ling, but Loopy Toad. Brother Ling, this is the current situation. Battle Sect had to help Huaxiao Alliance deal with the aftermath, and couldn't spare any manpower for the time being. Huaxiao Alliance thinks that we need to find the right person to keep an eye on these two. Nothing will happen to Li Huanran, but it's mainly this Jiang Yingyue. It wouldn't be good if something happens to her, grenade-throwing senior immortal said. The Battle Sect he mentioned was actually the Office of Strategic Deception. This was a new alias that the Office of Strategic Deception had recently established, which was convenient and more domineering. At the present busy stage, who would watch over Jiang Yingyue seemed to be a problem. Thus, grenade-throwing senior immortal's idea was to have Li Huanran and Jiang Yingyue live in Wei Zhi's house. Wang Ling broke out in a sweat when he heard this. Wang Zhen and Lu Qingyi were already living in Wei Zhi's house. If two more people, a man and a woman at that, were they going to shoot a romantic comedy, but this wasn't an impossible suggestion. First of all, Wang Zhen and Lu Qingyi were on Wang Ling's side. Their main job was to look after the spirit beasts in Wei Zhi's villa. After Li Huanran and Jiang Yingyue moved in, not only would they have a place to stay temporarily, the most important thing was that there would be someone to watch over them. Lu Qingyi was a very meticulous person. As long as she was around, it was unlikely that Jiang Yingyue would cause any trouble. In addition, the director of the apartment's neighborhood committee was Battle Saint Marshal Jiang, one of the 10 founding generals, who had retired. With Battle Saint around, Jiang Yingyue probably wouldn't dare move a muscle, which would be more effective than sending her to prison. So, this was indeed a feasible plan. Furthermore, Wei Zhi's apartment was big enough to house more than a dozen spirit beasts, let alone 2 more people. But in the end, this still required Wei Zhi's approval. After the conversation was over, Loopy Toad, who had been crouching on the side and listening for a long time, finally understood that grenade-throwing's call was actually for Wang Ling. Everyone knew that it had a pretty good relationship with Wei Zhi, and was one of the few friends Loopy Toad had made while it had been cultivating on Earth. Loopy Toad replied, "It won't be difficult, I just need to give him a heads up." "Thank you, brother dog." Grenade-throwing senior immortal smiled brightly. "Also, are you investigating the matter of the fake numinous mother?" Loopy Toad asked with concern at that moment. We've already done some scouting based on the clues Jiang Yingyue provided. We should have some news in a few days." With that, the call ended. Wang Ling thought he could finally rest, but in the end, there was a series of messages in their number 60 high school delegation, 2, WeChat group. Why was it 2? That was because Lotus Sun wasn't among the members. This group, as well as the messages, had all come from Wang Ling's call with grenade-throwing senior immortal. Someone had set up a new group chat, leaving all the teachers and Lotus Sun outside, and seemed to be secretly plotting something. Wang Ling scrolled up the chat history and skimmed through it several times before he realized that everyone was discussing visiting Lotus Sunday Super Chin. "Did you find out?" "What hospital?" "Hirogua," my uncle replied. Songhai 7-star First Military Medical Hospital. Xia Ming sighed. As expected of classmate Lotus Sun. It's not easy to get into this hospital, then the question is, who among us is free to visit classmate Lotus Sun tomorrow? Let me say this first, I actually really want to go, but the problem is that after the competition, my mom wants to take me out for a walk. Super Chin, walk. Xia Ming, it wasn't easy for our school to win first place, and I'm one of the representatives. Shouldn't I go out and show off to our relatives? Hero Gua, me too, Super Chin, +1. Li Yuyue, me too. By the way, I also made a nutritious bento for classmate Lotus Sun, which can speed up her recovery. Who's free tomorrow? Seeing this, Wang Ling finally couldn't take it anymore. He felt that if he didn't say anything, this matter would most likely fall on him. Just then, Super Chin suddenly said, how about this, those who don't say anything now will form a group to visit Lotus Sun tomorrow. As soon as he said this, Fang Xing, Wang Zhen, Lu Qingyi, Zhen Yuan and Gu Xuanji sent a string of smiley faces. Before Wang Ling could send an ellipsis, these people had already finished sending before him. These people were actually all spying on him. Wang Ling. Super Chen, then Wang Ling, you'll go tomorrow. Stop pretending, I know you're also spying on us. Our consolation gifts will be sent to your house at noon tomorrow. Take them to classmate Sun on our behalf. Wang Ling. Chapter 12-13. At noon, Wang Ling received a large box of things which Super Chen and the others had prepared single-handedly. Although Wang Ling had seen the list of condolences last night, he was still dazzled when so many things were laid out in front of him. There were all kinds of things in the box, except for elixirs. Everyone knew very well that Lotus Sun's family produced elixirs. It was possible that the chicken blood tonic pills she bought on the market would be produced by a pill company under Huaguo Water Curtain Group, so there was no point in giving them elixirs. Xia Ming's gift was a USB. He knew that Lotus Sun actually didn't have a good impression of him, so he had taken out the video of his duel with Wang Ling and edited out all the scenes of him being beaten to make a ghastly video. Li Yuyue had prepared a love bento, which was packed in an insulated magic treasure that prevented spoilage. Wang Ling could smell the fragrance even through the lids. Super Chen's gift was 2 pink dumbbells for women, showing his true colors. However, Super Chen already subconsciously thought that dumbbells were the best gift. Dopigua's gift was a little special. He had carefully selected a rainbow butterfly that was in its cocoon from his family's spirit beast shop. This silkworm pupa was on a branch next to the incubator. Presumably, it had the beautiful meaning of breaking out of the cocoon and becoming a butterfly. Gu Xuanji, Wang Zhen, and the others had just arrived on Earth, and apart from working for grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, they didn't have much savings. Furthermore, they didn't know what to give Lotus Sun, so these gurus from outside Earth had joined forces to buy several hundred masks. It was flu season now, and masks had really become hard currency. Frontline medical staff were in short supply and consumed a lot every day. Relying on their salaries from grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Wei Ji, these people were able to buy these masks, which was already a huge sum of money. Since everyone had given something, Wang Ling felt that it would be a little stingy if he didn't. After pondering for a long time, he finally steeled his heart and stuffed 2 packets of original flavor crispy noodle snacks into the box. In other people's eyes, the value of the crispy noodle snacks definitely wasn't as high as the masks, but in Wang Ling's eyes, they were hard currency that he could exchange for anything. After doing all this, Wang Ling took out a storage bag which he had prepared beforehand, put away all the supplies in the box, and was ready to set off. Before leaving, Mother Wang tossed a cotton mask to Wang Ling from afar. Put it on when you go out. The city is not like Nine Dragon Mountain. It's very strict now. Although you're different from others, you still have to wear a mask. Wang Ling was about to ask Mother Wang what made him different from other people, but her next words directly left him speechless. Other people are afraid of viruses, but you're the virus that's afraid of you. Wang Ling, Actually, Mother Wang couldn't be blamed for this, because the viruses in the cultivation world were indeed very scary, especially in the era of national cultivation, where it was most likely to produce that kind of super virus. Once the virus was produced in the body, it would be a test of the cultivator's self-recovery ability because ordinary pills would not work at all. Wang Ling was different. The blood flowing in his veins had the ability to purify itself, and any virus that was inhaled into his body would be killed. When he walked down the street, he was no different from a walking air purifier. Thus, the mask Mother Wang gave Wang Ling was only to prevent him from being stopped when he took public transport. In fact, the mask was very breathable and wouldn't hinder his breathing. Mother Wang, the flu in Shanghai City has been pretty serious these 2 days. Everyone else is contributing by staying at home. As for you, you have great ability and great responsibility. If you have nothing to do, go out on the streets and purify the air. Wang Ling, ? On the way to the hospital where Lotus Sun was in the spirit bus, Wang Ling saw that the streets were indeed under curfew, and that there were a lot fewer people out and about. The reason why he was taking public transport was that he was deliberately stalling for time. It was now noon, and Lotus Sun should still be eating. Wang Ling felt that if he used the great teleportation spell to report on his mission, he might be asked to stay for lunch, so he would rather stall for time. It was already 2 hours later when he arrived at Shanghai City's 7 stars first military medical hospital. Wang Ling entered from the south entrance of the hospital according to the address Hero Gua had found out. Through the ornate iron gates, Wang Ling immediately saw the snow-white building behind him that didn't look like a hospital at all. From a distance, it simply looked like a castle where the nobles lived. Wang Ling paused at the entrance for a moment, and an old guard wearing a mask came out of the security office. "Young man, who are you looking for?" After asking this question, he looked Wang Ling up and down, and then his mind suddenly jolted. "Aren't you what's your name again? Oh, that's right. You're a speck of ash from that era." Wang Ling felt that his great shielding spell really needed to be upgraded. Although people couldn't call out his name under the effect of the great shielding spell, the problem was that he had found another nickname to replace it. Being called a speck of ash from the era every day was too much. "You're Miss Sun's classmate, right? Miss Sun already told me that as long as a classmate comes today, I'll let you in." The old man smiled and patiently explained the route to Wang Ling. "Young man, walk along the main road. It's the first building, and the first room on the first floor." Before Wang Ling could thank him, the old man had already opened the big iron gate. He had just stepped in when he heard the old man say from behind, "Student, you don't have to worry too much. As far as I know, Miss Sun's health is actually fine. She's here to stay and have fun. The building where Miss Sun lives is full of recovering patients who are recuperating. There's a doctor's meeting in the afternoon, so no outsiders will pass by. Also, the soundproofing is great. No one will find out what she's doing." Wang Ling somehow felt that this old man was hinting at something. When he reached the entrance of Building 1, a mechanical eye peeked out from inside. This was a medical detection mechanical eye. When the medical staff wasn't around, it would be on duty to guide, deliver medicine, and disinfect people in and out of the building. Wang Ling felt his body being hit by a purple sterilizing light. Then, the mechanical eye quickly made way for him to go to Lotus Sun's ward. At the door, Wang Ling saw a quiet young girl in a light blue patient's gown. Her body was turned sideways as she stared out the window in boredom. It was obvious that she didn't want to stay in the ward. But as the future heir to the family, it was her responsibility to obey orders. The sound of footsteps alerted Lotus Sunday. She turned her head, and in that moment, her eyes happened to meet Wang Ling's at the door. Chapter 12-14. At that moment, the building's mechanical eyes had already accurately transmitted the visitor's information back to the Security Command Center in Huaguo Water Curtain Group's building. Information on Wang Ling's visit had already been transmitted here and was projected on a large screen. Sun Yiyuan had been waiting for Wang Ling in the command center for a long time. Why did Wang Ling have to be number 60 High's representative to visit Lotus Sun? In fact, this was also part of Old Man Sun's plan. The person in charge of the command center wiped his sweat. Since last night, Old Man Sun had been plotting his scheme. This included contacting the parents of the members of the delegation, using evil money to bribe them to bring their children to visit relatives the next day, and giving each parent a large gift box of pills from Huaguo Water Curtain Group. Everything she had done was just to help Big Miss Lotus Sun get a chance to get close to a youngster. Old Master, is he the person you are looking for? The little brother asked. His name was Jiang Shaoqi, Old Man Sun's #1 Secretary General and the Commander-in-Chief of Huaguo Water Curtain Group Security Command Center. That's right, little Che, that's him. Sun Yiyuan nodded. To be honest, this was the first time Jiang Shaoqi had seen Old Master Sun so serious. In short, this classmate Wang Ling was clearly a very special existence to Old Man Sunday. That was because the Security Command Center would intervene and obstruct almost all the boys who tried to get close to Lotus Sunday. Only Wang Ling's situation was the opposite. Not only did Old Man Sun not stop them, he even tried to create opportunities to improve their relationship and interaction. This was simply unbelievable to Jiang Shaoqi. But thinking about it carefully, Jiang Shaoqi suddenly felt that perhaps this matter had a great deal to do with the yin-yang death calamity on the girl's body. That divining immortal master had once said that the yin and yang death tribulation was the greatest calamity in her life. Those who cast the spell were born at the beginning of the year, and those who dispelled the spell were born at the end of the year. When Xia Ming had first appeared, Old Man Sun had always suspected that he was the one who had set up the curse, so his attitude towards Xia Ming had always been very bad. But from all the recent signs, it seemed that Xia Ming wasn't the one who had cast the spell. Currently, the only reliable information Old Man Sun had was that Wang Ling was most likely the person who could break the curse. Therefore, it is necessary to create opportunities. If Wang Ling's identity was true, the closer he got to Lotus Sun, the better. Little Che, think of a way to keep him here, Old Man Sun said seriously as he stared at the image on the screen. How long are you staying? Jiang Shaoqi asked. It would be best if we could spend the night. Spend the night. The corner of Jiang Shaoqi's mouth twitched. He hadn't expected things to go this far. I know this request might be a little too much, and her parents might not agree to it. If we really can't keep him, it's good to keep him here for a while longer. Old Man Sun sighed and said, if the boy has any other requests, try your best to satisfy him. Kids nowadays love snacks. Should we send some over? Jiang Shaoqi suggested. Well, it's not impossible, but normal snacks are out of the question. All of them were imported high-end snacks. We, the Huaguo Water Curtain Group, have our own status. Yes, Master. It wasn't like Wang Ling had never experienced the awkwardness of being alone in a room with a woman. He wasn't good with words, and didn't know how to flirt with girls like some boys who were good at calculating emotions. He had even been relatively slow and wooden. But for Lotus Sun, Wang Ling's appearance was a huge surprise. On the hospital bed, Lotus Sun instantly sat up straight. Her eyes suddenly flashed as she stared at the door in disbelief. Classmate Wang Ling. The girl had heard that number 60 High would send a representative to visit her, but she had never expected it to be Wang Ling. Wang Ling scratched his head, then took out the gifts everyone had given her. Did everyone give me these? Lotus Sun was pleasantly surprised. Wang Ling nodded. Let me see what's in there. Lotus Sun happily opened the box. Although there weren't any valuable things in the box, every gift was definitely representative. Just by looking at them, the girl could roughly tell who had given them to her. This pink dumbbell is definitely from Super Chen. And the silkworm pupa in the incubator, it looks like it's a rainbow butterfly. It's a good thing you didn't bring Loopy Toad with you, otherwise it wouldn't have been able to resist eating it on the way here. Lotus Sun couldn't help laughing. Wang Ling, the gift was light, but the sentiment was heavy. The warmth of friendship instantly swept away all the gloominess she had been feeling all morning, and she felt warm all over. And most importantly, she immediately noticed the 2 packets of original flavor crispy noodle snacks in the box. Although Lotus Sun rarely ate snacks in order to maintain her figure, she knew Wang Ling and knew that this was probably what he treasured the most. Classmate Wang Ling gave me such a precious gift. Is there anything you want in return? After receiving a gift, she naturally had to return the favor. As the future heir to the group, Lotus Sun was naturally well versed in etiquette. She would return the others' gifts in person when they returned to school in 2 days. And now that Wang Ling happened to be here, she decided to return them on the spot. To be honest, the girl's question really stumped Wang Ling. He was only here to send gifts on behalf of everyone else, and had no intention of asking her for anything in return. Furthermore, the point was that he didn't think he needed anything at all. If he had to say it, he did need pocket money. But the problem was, could he ask for it? Classmate Wang Ling, sit down first. You can tell me directly if there's anything you want. Lotus Sun smiled slightly and pressed the call button to have the mechanical eye wandering outside come into the ward to make a cup of tea for Wang Ling. Wang Ling obediently sat down and picked up the teacup. His mind was blank as he felt the overflowing aroma of tea and the heat hitting his face. For example, magic treasures, elixirs, technological products. The girl prompted further. Then clothes, pants, shoes. Or a house, a car, or land. Immortal warships, aircraft carriers, and laser missiles are fine too. Wang Ling, ? Why was there such a thing? It's fine, classmate Wang Ling, take your time to think about it. Lotus Sun smiled slightly. Then, the girl opened the nutritious bento that Li Yuyue had prepared. The colors of the side dishes in the bento were very exquisite, and the meat and vegetables were evenly distributed, which looked very appetizing. But after carefully examining the size of the bento, Lotus Sun's face instantly turned red. She looked at Wang Ling, feeling a little at a loss. Classmate Wang Ling, this bento, it looks like, it's for 2. Now, she finally understood what Li Yuyue had meant when she had texted her at around noon, before Wang Ling had arrived. The text had said, "This is all I can help you with." Classmate Lotus Sun. P.S. Today is Dog Food Day, and Pai Pai Ku has specially prepared 50 red packets. Open Alipay, red packet, and type in the password Ling Jinren's favorite crispy noodle snacks to grab the red packets. Chapter 12-15. As members of Wang Ling's fan club, under Xia Ming's call, they also started to quietly lay out a plan to trap Wang Ling. For example, this love bento was part of the Trap Wang Ling ******** plan. Li Yuyue had already thought about it when she was making the bento for 2. As Lotus Sun's bestie at school, their friendship had deepened after the National Body Technique Exchange Conference this time. Helping others achieve their goals. This was what a bestie was supposed to do. Instead of thinking about comparing boyfriends all day long. When she saw that her bestie's boyfriend was better than hers, she wanted to steal him. Especially in a situation where her bestie was a popular young lady, turning herself into a wingman to assist her was the best way. Li Yuyue was very clear about this. As long as she succeeded, her path would be wide open. Snatching something from the young lady, whether it was a person or an item, would probably end up being dragged out by the bodyguards and thrown into the river. Lotus Sun closed the lunchbox with a flushed face. She really wasn't ready to share a lunchbox with Wang Ling, and was so nervous that her heart was about to jump out of her chest. Classmate Wang Ling. Can you play video games with me? There's an arcade on the 3rd floor. Lotus Sun requested. In order to make the situation less awkward, the girl used her usual trick, changing the subject. Wang Ling was blank. He couldn't figure out why there was an arcade in this hospital building. This hospital is very special. There's an arcade on the 3rd floor, and you can directly swipe a card or scan a code to buy game coins. It's also called the Employee Wage Recovery Plan. Wang Ling didn't expect her to know the hospital's structure so well. He listened to the girl's incessant chatter as she explained the situation in the arcade. The purpose of building the arcade is to give medical staff a chance to relax. The most popular facility is called the Medical Disturbance Boxing Room. Almost every day, the city will add malicious medical troublemakers to the list of untrustworthy people, and these people will be turned into game data and turned into enemies in this facility. Beating the enemy will earn you points, and the top 3 players on the monthly ranking will get extra bonuses. It was clear that this wasn't the girl's first time being hospitalized for observation. There might be some hidden story behind this. Lotus Sun hadn't been seriously injured during the competition, but Huaguo Water Curtain Group had arranged for her to be sent away overnight. Everyone felt that they were being overly protective. But looking at all the signs now, Wang Ling felt that something might have happened to her. He quietly activated his king's eye and gazed at Lotus Sun's soul. The young girl's soul was as pure as water. Just like her sword's spirit mysterious sea, there was no trace of contamination. Wasn't it a curse? Wang Ling never thought that his first instinct would be wrong. Driven by curiosity, Wang Ling wanted to find out more about what on earth had happened to the girl. In the end, the girl ate a pink pill, and smoke instantly rose from her body, as if she were a magical girl who had changed clothes in an instant. This was the 100 Transformation Pill, a pill specially designed by Huaguo Water Curtain Group for the majority of women. It could fuse one's clothes and cosmetics with space compression technology. After taking it, one could instantly change clothes and put on makeup within 2 seconds. At this moment, the young girl was wearing a pure white dress, and she looked like a brand new person. "Student Wang Ling, let's go." The girl smiled. Wang Ling sighed in his heart. Calculating the time, he felt that it would be late for him to go home again. But playing video games with the young girl at the arcade was better than eating a boxed lunch in the ward. There weren't any crispy noodle snacks or pepper in this lunchbox. Although it was beautifully made, Wang Ling didn't have much of an appetite. At that moment, a new message came from Huaguo Water Curtain Group's Security Command Center. "Master, the hospital's mechanical eye reports that Miss and that boy are currently moving toward the arcade on the 3rd floor. Jiang Xiaoche reported the current situation truthfully. Playing video games is good. This is how young people build relationships." Old Man Sun nodded with satisfaction. The more he looked at Wang Ling, the more he liked him. In the ward, her granddaughter had listed out so many things, including houses, cars, land, and even laser missiles. But this boy was completely unmoved. It was truly rare in the world to see a teenager who was indifferent to fame and fortune, and had no desire for money or material things. "Master, what do you plan to do? Let's see what they want to play and act accordingly. I remember that this arcade is funded by our group, right?" "Yes, we can adjust all of the equipment remotely." At that moment, Jiang Xiaoche looked at the image on the screen. "It looks like Miss and the others are going to play claw machines." "A claw machine?" Old Man Sun smiled. Claw machines were a good opportunity to test Wang Ling's patience. Some youngsters would deliberately destroy dolls if they couldn't catch them. Old Man Sun wanted to see if Wang Ling would become impatient. However, most claw machines actually had their own internal settings. For example, it cost 1 game coin to catch a doll, and the claw machine's internal settings would increase the strength of the claw on the 49th attempt, making it easier to catch the doll. Of course, they were happy to catch a doll, but in fact, they had just spent 49 yuan to buy a doll. Of course, that didn't rule out the possibility that some claw machine gurus could analyze the mechanics and use hooks, drifts, and so on to clear the claw machine again and again. These people would be blacklisted by the arcade. "Change all the dolls to the heaviest ones, and adjust the strength of the claw to the loosest," Old Man Sun ordered at that moment. "Yes." Jiang Xiaoche nodded. Thus, when Lotus Sun took Wang Ling to the claw machine, he saw that it looked like this. Each of the dolls in this claw machine was the size of a basketball. The most outrageous one was the claw. It was the size of an ear scoop. Even Lotus Sun felt that the claw machine's structure was a little different from before. Classmate Wang Ling, this might be the most difficult claw machine at the moment. The girl explained helplessly. She glanced around at the nearby claw machines, and found that almost all of them were like this. It was impossible for such a small claw to catch such a big doll. But in theory, it wasn't impossible to catch them. As long as the claw was strong enough, it might be possible to grab the ring on the back of the doll's head and pull it out. Classmate Wang Ling, do you want to try? The girl looked at the black-hearted claw machine and felt a little hopeless. Contrary to the girl's expectations, he actually really intended to catch them. Wang Ling answered, being a man of few words. Well, I'll help you insert the coin, but can you really catch it? The girl was still skeptical. Wang Ling indeed didn't have much experience in catching dolls, he couldn't even be considered a claw machine guru. As for why Wang Ling was interested in this claw machine, the reason was very simple. Because there were dolls in this claw machine. There were all kinds of raccoons. At that moment, Wang Ling had already put his hand on the claw machine's lever. He was going to start showing off. Chapter 12-16. Admittedly, as long as Wang Ling used magic, he could easily catch any of the dolls inside. But it was only interesting to catch dolls with skill. There was no need to use a sledgehammer to kill a chicken. Using the heavenly Tao to catch dolls was a little too much. On the side, the girl's eyes were full of anticipation. She could roughly guess why this row of doll-catching machines in front of her was completely different from before. It was probably the result of someone secretly messing with them. Jiang Xiaoche, when she got the chance later, she would definitely make arrangements for this person. At that moment, Wang Ling's eyes were fixed on the raccoon inside the machine. One of the key elements of a doll-catching machine was to learn to be one with the eye. Wang Ling used the king's eye's 3D vision to observe and analyze the position of each doll. These dolls were very close together, and since they were so close, there was bound to be friction, which depended on the surface area of contact between the dolls. With the king's eye's 3D vision, Wang Ling very quickly made the best decision. He used the joystick to move the hook over. In the end, the hook, which was the size of an ear pick, was too light, and before Wang Ling could move it to the designated position with the joystick, it started to shake wildly in the air. On the screen, Jiang Xiaoche couldn't help laughing when he saw this scene. At this level of difficulty, no one would be able to successfully catch a doll. This was nightmarish difficulty. Only a top expert at claw-catching machines would have the same small probability of catching a doll as drawing an SSR. When the small hook in front of him started to shake at a high frequency, Wang Ling already realized how difficult it would be to catch a doll with pure skill. But this wasn't going to stump him. There were still 30 seconds left on the machine's countdown timer. The hook in front of him was really too swaying, and even after reaching its target, it was still swaying non-stop. Thus, Wang Ling came up with an idea and decided to use the second adjacent machine. Student Wang Ling, you can do it. Lotus Sun didn't know exactly what Wang Ling was going to do, but she still obediently helped him put in the game token. As the second machine started up, Wang Ling moved the hook to the edge of the second machine via the joystick. Under everyone's gazes, he started to shake the joystick like crazy. The higher the joystick's frequency, the higher the frequency of the hook's shaking. Suddenly, Jiang Xiaoche seemed to know Wang Ling's goal. Quick! Increase the weight of the lever. Once again, he increased the lever's resistance to the maximum, but unfortunately, this wasn't enough to stop Wang Ling. Report. I've already increased the resistance to the maximum, but it doesn't seem to work. The staff in charge of adjustments frowned. They had never seen something like this before. Even though they had already adjusted the resistance to the maximum, the joystick was still moving left and right flexibly under the young man's control, and the frequency of its movement was getting faster and faster. It had to be said that the joystick was indeed of excellent quality. Even after Wang Ling's torment, it still stood firm and didn't break. When the frequency of the shaking reached the limit, the two hooks on the left and right actually produced a resonance at this moment. It formed a powerful magnetic field. The raccoon doll that Wang Ling had taken a fancy to earlier actually floated like a magnetic levitation object under this magnetic field. Lotus Sun, ? Elder Sun, ? Jiang Yish, ? Wang Ling seized the opportunity to slap the glass on the outside of the claw machine. It was a very precise strike. The huge raccoon fell into the hole at the exit with great precision. Bending down to pick up the raccoon doll, Wang Ling felt a sense of accomplishment in his heart. Sure enough, it was more interesting not to use magic on claw machines. Wang Ling tore off the little note tied to the raccoon's tail. In fact, this note was an exchange voucher that could be exchanged for a box of crispy noodle snacks at a designated shop. This was also the main reason why Wang Ling had chosen claw machines in the first place. If it wasn't for the fact that this was one of Lotus Sun's family's businesses, and that he couldn't be too high profile, he would have directly cleared out all the raccoons in this row of claw machines. Tearing off the label, Wang Ling stuffed the raccoon into Lotus Sun's arms. The girl was pleasantly surprised. Wang Ling, you're giving it to me? Wang Ling nodded. His goal had just been the little note. Since he had already achieved his goal, the doll's value no longer existed. After all, as a platinum member of the Crispy Noodle Snacks flagship store, Wang Ling could use his spending points to exchange for no less than 1,000 raccoon dolls. In the end, the doll's value couldn't compare to that of the Crispy Noodle Snacks. Thank you. I'll keep it well. The girl's face beamed with joy. Come to think of it, this seemed to be the first time Wang Ling had given her a gift. In front of the screen, the corners of Jiang Xiaoche's eyes twitched. He felt that his young miss was completely spoiled. At the end of the day, whether it was the claw machine or the raccoon doll, weren't they both products of their Huaguo water curtain group? Even if this kid wanted to present Buddha with borrowed flowers, he didn't have to do it like this. Jiang Xiaoche was just about to complain to Sun Yiyuan when Old Man Sun actually burst into tears as he stared at the screen. Jiang Xiaoche was so scared that he swallowed all his complaints on the spot. Old Man Sun wiped his tears with a handkerchief. Ah! I've never seen my Rongrong so happy. Not only is this kid excellent at claw games, he also knows how to win a girl's heart. He took so much effort to catch a doll, and he even wants to give it to my good granddaughter, just like me back then. Jiang Xiaoche was completely speechless. Apart from the day Lotus Sun was born, this was the second time Jiang Xiaoche had seen Old Man Sun show such an expression. He didn't like Wang Ling, but he didn't dare openly disagree with Old Man Sunday. Brother Jiang, they're heading toward the gold coin bulldozer. At that moment, the technician in charge of operating the machine gave him the latest update. Same rules, increase the difficulty. Replace all the coins in the bulldozer with the lightest ones, Jiang Xiaoche ordered. He was very familiar with this video game equipment, and naturally knew how to tamper with it. As long as he used the light and thin coins and raised the slope of the opening, the game coins would easily stack up and wouldn't fall no matter how much they fell. Classmate Wang Ling, this machine is really fun. When Lotus Sun went to the video game city, this was practically the machine she had to play. It was very difficult to experience the thrill of pushing the gold coin bulldozer with a small amount of game coins for a big gain with other devices. Jiang Xiaoche thought that he could stump Wang Ling by tampering with it. Wang Ling stared at the machine and knew that it had also been tampered with. He put his hand on the glass cover in a fit of pique and gave it a light tug. The game coins inside instantly fell out like a waterfall and gushed out of the opening in a steady stream. Lotus Sun estimated the number of game coins downstream, and there were about 300 of them. In the command center, Jiang Xiaoche yelled, "This is a sabotage machine. It's cheating. Why are you yelling so loudly? Then go find property management." Next to him, Old Man Sun rolled his eyes and covered Jiang Xiaoche's mouth. Then, the old man's expression quickly changed to one of benevolence as he looked at Wang Ling on the screen. He was very satisfied and couldn't stop praising him. "Not bad, Not only does he know how to win a girl's heart, he also knows how to manage money. Jiang Xiaoche. What F*** King Financial Management? Chapter 12-17. Wang Ling and Lotus Sun basically tried out all the equipment in the video arcade on the third floor. Jiang Xiaoche had modified the frequency at which the hamster's head shrank, and when the machine was turned on, the hamster's head shrank back and forth like a ghost. Wang Ling held the small hammer and unexpectedly kept up with the hamster's speed, setting the highest record in the history of the hamster machine. How can a man's hand move up and down rhythmically so fast? This isn't scientific. Jiang Xiaoche was flustered and exasperated. This child's hand speed is similar to mine back then. How is it that he can still shoot in the basket machine when I've clearly shrunk it on purpose? Wonderful, wonderful. I'm afraid this is the legendary condensed version of the shot from Earth. Through the acceleration of gravity over a very short distance, the force of the basketball's fall is greatly increased, and the goal is to shoot the ball in when the hoop isn't paying attention. Sir, wake up. It looks like the machine in the medical disturbance boxing room has been broken. It's very expensive. It's been beaten by so many people, it's normal for it to be in disrepair. The lad might have just made the final cut. Not only does this prove that he's lucky, it's also very manly. He's very similar to mine back then. When dealing with medical disturbances that have nothing better to do, you should teach them a lesson like this. Sir, that's enough, enough. A real man is upright and aboveboard. Even if you do something behind his back, he'll still get through it. Why are you complaining about being wronged and pretending to be pitiful here? The more old man's son looked at Wang Ling, the more he found him adorable and liked him. Jiang Xiaoche. It was already 7:00 in the evening when he returned home after saying goodbye to Lotus Sunday. Wang Ling hadn't expected it to take him so long to play video games. But it wasn't like he hadn't gained anything at all. At the very least, he had gained a lot of points from the arcade. That afternoon, he had climbed to the number 1 spot on the various equipment leaderboards one after another. Wang Ling could use these points to exchange for snacks at any similar arcade in Shanghai City. There were quite a lot of arcade chains in every area of Shanghai City, and there was one on the student street next to number 60 high school. Wang Ling planned to check it out after school this week. Wang Ling knew that his glorious ascension to the top spot in the video game hall rankings was a little too high profile, which wasn't in line with his style, but there was nothing he could do about it. People always have things that they can't control. Especially when he found out that he could exchange points for snacks, he was instantly overwhelmed. However, he didn't leave his real name on the video game hall's ranking list. He gave himself an alias, Agon. What Wang Ling never expected was that his nickname, Agon, became a legend in the video game parlor in just a few days. It was finally Wang Ling's turn to go to school on Wednesday, November 25th. After 2 days of adjustment, the others were clearly in a much better state of mind, but Wang Ling still looked exhausted. Wang Ling, you don't look very well. It's nothing. Wang Ling shook his head. The main reason was that he was too tired yesterday. Following the map that Mother Wang and Father Wang had drawn up, he had traversed the entire Earth as quickly as he could, and using his ability to purify himself, he had basically eliminated the new influenza virus that had been spreading recently. Not only that, Wang Ling had also predicted that one day in the future, some people in the cultivation world would begin to develop curiosity about the universe, and would excessively mine unknown ores from other planets in an attempt to bring them back to Earth for research. In doing so, they would accidentally unseal the virus hidden in the ores in the universe. Thus, Wang Ling made another trip to Earth, and purified hundreds of galaxies near it. By the time Wang Ling rushed back to Earth, it was already morning. He directly changed into his school uniform and seamlessly ran to class without even taking a break. But Wang Ling was very good at adjusting himself. He only needed to sit down and calm down for 10 minutes or so, and he would be full of energy again. Fortunately, it was still morning self-study time, and there was enough time for Wang Ling to rest. As for his studies, although Teacher Pan had compiled and distributed videos of their classes during their 2 days off, Wang Ling hadn't watched them for even a second. Even watching them at twice the speed was a bit of a waste of time. For Wang Ling, the fastest way to learn was his rapid quantum wave reading spell. The first class on Wednesday was Theory of History. Old Antique walked into the classroom to ask Lotus Sun to help him distribute the revision outline, but it was only then that he realized that Lotus Sun's seat was empty. "Student Lotus Sun hasn't recovered yet?" Old Antique asked. "I think she's still under observation," Little Peanut raised his hand and answered. "Still under observation?" Old Antique frowned. He had actually examined Lotus Sun's injury before, and it actually wasn't that serious. Old Antique's intuition told him that Huaguo Water Curtain Group might be worried about something, which was why they had kept Lotus Sun in the hospital all this time. In name, it was for observation, but in fact, it was for protection. After all, Lotus Sun had attracted a Shadow Stream killer before, and this time, she had made a name for herself through her battle with Yi Jiang in the national competition. There was indeed a chance that some people would be jealous and take advantage of Lotus Sun's injury to make another move. But the problem was that there hadn't been any movements in the killer world recently. Old Antique was bewildered. Ever since he and Taoist Tao Tai had become friends again, under their unified command, there hadn't been any more trouble in the killer world. Now, the entire professional killer world was about to become a professional team that got rid of the tyrants and exposed fakes. There were even people scrambling to help an old lady cross the road. So, maybe there was another reason for this? Putting this question aside for the time being, Old Antique decided to go to class first. Picking up a brand new piece of chalk from the lectern, he turned his plump body around and wrote down today's lesson content on the blackboard. Unexpectedly, Wang Ling was familiar with these 4 words. Numinous Mother. Playing with the chalk in his hand, Old Antique introduced the 4 words on the blackboard with some pride on his face. Does anyone know what kind of person Numinous Mother is? If you do, I can reward you with a spicy strip. As soon as he said this, the whole class fell silent. According to normal class procedure, Old Antique began to call out names and ask, "Hirogua, do you know?" To be honest, this question really stumped Dopey Gua. When he saw Old Antique write these 4 words, he had been about to text his uncle for help. "Hirogua, teacher." "I don't know." "Then Gu Xuanji, do you know?" "Teacher, I don't know either." Gu Xuanji shook his head. Wang Ling. At that moment, Wang Ling really wanted to answer with the words, "My mom." But if he said it, someone had to believe it. Chapter 12-18. What was it like to listen to a teacher tell his mother's story in class? Wang Ling had a feeling that this theory of history class was going to be very magical. There were actually quite a few people present who knew Numinous Mother's true identity. The people from the domain of the gods all knew, but they were just pretending to be ignorant. Sometimes being ignorant wasn't a bad thing. When people were alive, they had to be a little more muddle-headed when they needed to be, and they wouldn't have so many worries. Seeing that Wang Ling couldn't answer, Old Antique nodded in satisfaction. He had already expected this situation, and his expression was very happy. The truth was that since the first semester of number 60 high school, Old Antique had been looking for an opportunity to talk about his Shifu, Numinous Mother, but unfortunately, he hadn't been able to find a suitable entry point. Now, after the national competition, he had finally found one. It seems that all of you don't know who this Numinous Mother is. So, today, let's talk about her. Old Antique had a proud expression on his face because of his deep respect for this name. So although Old Antique loved to talk about gossip in theory of history class, Wang Ling wasn't the least bit worried that the content of this class would go astray. Since he was talking about his Shifu, the content would definitely be very positive and full of energy. Students, in the previous class, we talked about the story of the 2 epic-level killers who founded the ranking list of killers, Gorgeous Itinerant and Daoist Tao Tai. As a matter of fact, this Numinous Mother is related to these 2 people. Old Antique turned to the crowd and said, "Numinous Mother is the ancestor of the world of killers. Whether it's gorgeous itinerant or Tao Tai, they're both her disciples." When he said this, the whole class was in an uproar. Wang Ling and the other people from the domain of the gods also opened their mouths wide and pretended to be very surprised. As expected, the atmosphere in the class began to liven up as Old Antique spoke. "Why is she named this? Has anyone seen what Numinous Mother looks like? Numinous Mother should be a woman, right? No one has seen what Numinous Mother looks like. Even her two disciples don't know. As for why she got this name, I think it might be her label for herself. Because of her uncanny assassination skills, she was given this name. As for whether Numinous Mother is referring to her own gender, I'm not too sure," said Old Antique. Hearing this, Wang Ling sighed in his heart. In fact, there were hints in Numinous Mother's words. As far as he knew, Mother Wang had already decided on his name before she gave birth to him. If she gave birth to a boy, he would be called Wang Ling. If she gave birth to a girl, she would be called Wang Ling. Therefore, the second half of the Numinous Mother's name, Numinous Mother, meant Ling, Mother. Why did teachers suddenly mention this person today? At this moment, someone in class raised a critical question. The Numinous Mother has always kept a low profile. She has never revealed herself. All the major assassins in the assassin world have formed the Numinous Mother Foundation. They are specifically looking for the whereabouts of the Numinous Mother through crowdfunding. Although no cultivator knows where Mother Spirit is, there is still a lot of evidence that shows that Mother Spirit has already reappeared in Jianghu. For example, in this year's national competition, there were traces of Mother Spirit appearing. The Numinous Mother appeared in the national competition. The whole class was shocked again. This time, even Wang Ling was stupefied. His mother was clearly resting at home. When did she participate in the national competition? Could it be the fake Numinous Mother that Jiang Yingyue had mentioned before? In this year's national competition, because of a mysterious manipulator behind the scenes, a large number of dark network-wanted criminals who had died were resurrected. Huaxiao Alliance dispatched a large number of cultivators to stop this, and among those who were resurrected was that dark ancestor Xia Sanshao who shocked the whole world back then. That dark network founder Xia Sanshao. Hero Guo couldn't help sweating at the mention of this name. Previously, when he had been looking up information in the library, he had accidentally seen this name. Filled with great curiosity, Master of Dopey had decided to climb over the wall to see if there was more information on the external network. In the end, what Dark Ancestor Xia Sanshao had done back then had left him unable to eat for several days in a row. This was an absolutely cruel and merciless person whose level of evil was beyond the scope of a normal person's understanding. It seems that some of you know who on earth this person is. Old Antique frowned when he said this. If Xia Sanshao had really come back to life at that time, he would have immediately taken revenge on the whole world, there's no doubt about that. Teacher, what happened next? A lot of factual evidence shows that Xia Sanshao was already killed. I also saw a picture of his corpse through some channels, but because of confidentiality regulations, I can't make it public to you. Old Antique said, based on my judgment, Xia Sanshao died from a very brilliant assassination technique. When Old Antique said this, the people in the domain of the gods also started to discuss this in their separate mental space. Jinyuan, Wang Zhen, didn't you go to the stalactite cave? Didn't you see Xia Sanshao? Wang Zhen, no. It really wasn't me. After Little Silver, Loopy Toad and I defeated Li Huanran, we practically swept the entire way. Jinyuan, then how did this Xia Sanshao die? Could it have been Senior Ling? No. Wang Ling flatly denied it. At the time, he had been busy playing meteorites with Wang Ying, and had no idea how Xia Sanshao had died. By the time he returned from space, Wang Zhen had practically taken care of everything on his side, and it really had been a draw without the slightest difficulty. Right now, Wang Ying was probably the only one who knew the answer. Wang Ling looked down at his own shadow. Wang Ying shivered under his gaze. I was focused on fighting you at the time, how could I have cared about this CS Sanshao? Wang Ling was speechless. Weren't you the one who brought this CS Sanshao back to life? I did a lot of research, and I think CS Sanshao is indeed the strongest of the Dark Network members. But this person is too paranoid. I wanted to feed him frozen dumplings to activate his shadow Dao, but this person pretended to swallow the dumplings, and then spat them out behind my back, causing his battle strength to plummet. Wang Ying couldn't help ridiculing him. If he had activated shadow Dao obediently, how could he have been so easily killed? Wang Ling, at that moment, in the classroom, Old Antique opened his mouth again. According to the evidence I saw, when Xie Sanxiao's body was found, there were 862 fatal stab wounds. It was an assassination that was completed in 1 second at an extremely fast speed. Every wound was of the same depth, and it was so precise that it made one's hair stand on end. Old Antique sighed. Apart from that primogenitor of the world of assassins, Numinous Mother, no one else can do such an assassination technique. Wang Ling. Chapter 12-19. Stabbing 862 times in 1 second was indeed difficult for anyone who wasn't a top expert to achieve this kind of hand speed. The problem was that although Mother Wang was known as Numinous Mother with the Axe, that was just a pseudonym she had used back then. The real Mother Wang was just an ordinary person. If Mother Wang had to write a resume, it would definitely go like this: Wang Yulan, female, lives in the East Huang Road area, married. Follows the lifestyle of a housewife every day, rests at 10 p.m. every day, doesn't smoke, and only drinks a little. Drinks a glass of warm milk before going to bed, then does 20 minutes of eye exercises before going to bed and sleeping until daybreak. She's an ordinary woman at the body refinement stage who never leaves her stress and fatigue to the next day. As his thoughts returned to Old Antique's class, Wang Ling felt that this time, Old Antique's train of thought had gone completely astray. He had been too stubborn in believing that the legendary Numinous Mother with the Axe was a top expert, which had led to his current blindness. But the identity of the person who had killed Xie Sanshao had become another mystery. Recently, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had been investigating leads on the fake Numinous Mother with the Axe, and Wang Ling felt that he might be able to get some answers from here. On the dais, Old Antique was still talking incessantly. Wang Ling felt that he had completely lost his mind in today's class. But it wasn't that Wang Ling couldn't understand. He had finally thought that he had found some clues about his Shifu whom he had never met, and it was indeed hard to suppress his joy and eagerness to share it with everyone. Wang Ling couldn't stop Old Antique from continuing. Students, it goes without saying how powerful Numinous Mother with the Axe is. Who was that Xie Sanshao? He was in the limelight back then, and at his peak, even that old devil might not have been his match. But it was this kind of person who was given a second life, and before he could do anything, Numinous Mother with the Axe sent him back to the next world. Old Antique pushed up his old-fashioned glasses and said, although I also want to know what on earth this Numinous Mother with the Axe really looks like. But if you're interested, maybe you can go to the video game arcade to find out. Wang Ling, I wonder if there are any students who like to play video games. If you do, you'll definitely find a gaming expert called Agon on the ranking board. This person broke multiple game records in a short span of a day, especially in the whack-a-mole game. That kind of hand speed can be said to be unprecedented, comparable to Numinous Mother's record of 862 stabs per second. If teacher's guess is correct, this person is the Numinous Mother. At this point, Wang Ling was instantly at a loss for words. Old Antique's guess was completely off the mark. When Old Antique mentioned Agon, it also sparked a heated discussion in the class. Arcade. Agon, so it's him. Super Chen was filled with deep veneration. This person is very strong. He even broke my shooting record. Who's Forrest Gump? Not the Forrest Gump. It's the dry, crisp, dry. Saying this, Super Chen's pupils suddenly contracted slightly, and he turned to look at Wang Ling. After a few seconds, he looked away from Wang Ling again. Although in the end, Super Chen didn't pin his suspicions on him. But sometimes, it had to be said. He indeed had the urge to get rid of Super Chen. Apart from Wang Ling and a few people from the domain of the gods, no one else in class knew the truth about the numinous mother. Old Antique spoke happily, and most of the people in class were just there to enjoy the show. At the end of the class, Old Antique was in a great mood. Not long after he returned to his desk and sat down, a summoning talisman from the headmaster's office turned into a bright stream of light and flew toward him from afar. This light exploded in front of his eyes and turned into specks of dust, which looked especially dazzling. Headmaster Chen's call. Old Antique immediately got up. In the headmaster's office, Headmaster Chen looked very serious. Logically speaking, he should be the happiest person at number 60 High's overwhelming victory in the national competition this time. But it was clearly not normal for him to have this kind of expression. Old Chen, what's with that constipated expression of yours? Old Antique didn't stand on ceremony. He directly sat down in a mahogany chair on the side and poured himself a cup of tea. As the backbone of number 60 High's teaching, he didn't need to stand on ceremony in front of the headmaster. Headmaster Chen took a deep breath and voiced his distress. Yi Jiyang's injury is more serious than I thought. Is it that kid from God of Swords Academy? Old Antique raised his eyebrows. This was General Yi's adopted son. Even if he was injured, the medical arrangements wouldn't be bad. Physical injuries can naturally be healed, but psychological injuries are a little difficult. Headmaster Chen sighed. He turned the magic ball on his desk, and an image of Yi Jiyang was projected in the air. His entire body was wrapped up like a mummy. We've already used the best treatment methods. When the gauze is removed tomorrow, he'll look like a new person. But... Speaking up to this point, Headmaster Chen changed the angle of the image and zoomed in on Yi Jiyang's eyes. In a flash, Old Antique understood what had happened. The teenager's sharp and arrogant eyes on the competition field had already disappeared, and he now looked a little wooden. Is he autistic from being beaten up? Old Antique was startled. It's more serious than autistic. Headmaster Chen said, according to President Qi's judgment, Yi Jiyang is suffering from a type of psychological trauma, also known as a pseudo-heart demon invasion. This so-called pseudo-heart demon invasion meant that it wouldn't flare up in the short term, but as time went on, the affected person's mind would gradually be devoured, and in the end, they would completely lose control, even leading to a dark latent period of up to several years. Because it was impossible to judge the extent of the devouring of the mind at each stage, the psychological treatment couldn't be as crude as the treatment for a heart demon invasion, otherwise it would have the opposite effect. If the intervention was too shallow, there was no way to eradicate it. If the intervention was too deep, the illness might be cured, but the person would become a fool. Therefore, this was even more troublesome than a true heart demon invasion. Has President Qi seen it? President Qi's ability to intervene is too strong, it's actually not suitable for him to do it himself. In the end, we also have some responsibility for what happened to Yi Jiyang. Speaking up to this point, Headmaster Chen laid out the difficulties they were currently facing. Currently, the best treatment plan given by the psychologist is to persuade student Lotus Sun to have another match with Yi Jiyang, and then have a fake match. Will Huaguo Water Curtain Group agree? Old Antique was taken aback. That's why I asked you to come up with a solution. Headmaster Chen had a helpless expression on his face. On one side was number 60 High's investors and board of directors, and on the other was General Yi's Sword God Academy. Headmaster Chen didn't want to offend either of them. Chapter 12-20. On the surface, General Yi had already retired, but in fact he still had some power. When Headmaster Chen had been at 7 stars, General Yi had even been his swordsmanship teacher. On one side was his teacher, who had done him a favor, and on the other side was number 60 High's biggest financial backer. How to balance the two left Headmaster Chen in a dilemma. Helpless, Headmaster Chen could only call Old Antique over. Among all the school teachers, Old Antique was steady and capable of taking on great responsibilities, and was one of the people Headmaster Chen trusted the most. If Old Antique stepped down from this position in 100 years, Headmaster Chen had even considered letting him take over as the next headmaster. Old Wang, what do you think we should do about this? Sunny Yuan is a businessman. He might not necessarily disagree, but he might put forward some conditions. Old Antique lowered his head and pondered. As for what conditions on earth, it was very hard for him to guess. Huaguo Water Curtain Group was as rich as a country, and Old Man's son, who held a high position, had almost already obtained everything he wanted in his life. It was really hard to predict what such a person needed. You have a point. Headmaster Chen couldn't agree more with Old Antique's point of view. People who don't have hobbies don't make friends. Even Mr. Sun definitely has something he wants but can't get. Old Antique said in a deep voice, not everything can be bought with money. Pondering for a moment, Headmaster Chen got up from his seat and straightened his clothes. Then I'll have to trouble you to come with me. I have classes this afternoon. Find someone to take over, or say you're sick. It's normal for the teachers in our school's sports team to get sick all the time. When do we leave? Now. It suddenly darkened in the afternoon in Shanghai City. Dark clouds hung in the sky, and it was as if all the light and brightness in the world had been obscured. In the storm, Headmaster Chen and Old Antique took number 60 High's headmaster's car to the Huaguo Water Curtain Group building. It's rare to see this kind of weather, it looks like the end of the world. Headmaster Chen looked out the window. The rain was so heavy that the car's windshield wipers weren't working at all, so the driver could only activate the spirit power barrier to keep the rain out. The spirit power barrier was suitable for extreme weather like this, and could also stop car accidents. The disadvantage was that it consumed a lot of gas, so Headmaster Chen usually didn't use it when he went out. Remember to turn it off when the rain stops, Headmaster Chen said to the driver. Yes. The driver nodded helplessly. You're too stingy. Old Antique couldn't help laughing. It can't be helped. You'll know when you're in this position. We only have so little funding. It was better to be thrifty. We can't be extravagant and wasteful. In the Huaguo Water Curtain Group building, Old Man's son was admiring a few pieces of calligraphy on his desk. The pleasure of the poor was money, while the pleasure of the rich was literature and art. These pieces of calligraphy were all written by the famous modern calligrapher Cituji. The full title was 10 Perfect Landscape Paintings. There were a total of 10 pieces. Old Man's son spent a huge amount of money to buy 3 of the 10 pieces from other collectors of calligraphy. Standing on the side, Jiang Shaoqi couldn't help sighing in his heart. He felt that Wang Ling's fondness for eating crispy noodle snacks and collecting cards was similar to his old man's. Looking at the time, Jiang Shaoqi decided to remind him, Master, I heard they're already on the way. I knew Chen Tianxiang wouldn't be able to hold back and would come looking for me. Sunny Yuan smiled faintly, as if he had everything under control. Huaguo Water Curtain Group had eyes everywhere in Shanghai City, even the slightest movement was within their grasp. The old man sitting at the entrance of number 60 high school was in fact also a member of Huaguo Water Curtain Group. Are you really going to help Yi Jiang? That little guy is indeed quite pitiful. Rong beat him into an autistic state in just a few rounds, and she was indeed a little heavy-handed. After the incident, didn't I immediately ask you to send him some tonics so that he wouldn't become a laughingstock? We've already taken responsibility for his physical injuries. If he has a psychological problem and blames it on us, I'm afraid that's a little unjustifiable. When Sunny Yuan said this, Jiang Shaoqi nodded like a chicken pecking at rice. You're right, Master. Some children nowadays were indeed mentally fragile. Perhaps it was because of the difference in their family environment that gave rise to an inferiority complex, or perhaps it was because their parents had spoiled them rotten, and they would fight to the death at the slightest grievance. In the end, it was clear that Yi Jiang's situation today had something to do with General Yi's education. This Yi Jiang has been invincible since he was a child, and with General Yi's true teachings, he has never lost a match since he was a child, said Jiang Shaoqi. Going too smoothly isn't a good thing. When Rong was growing up, I deliberately arranged for a lot of Golden Core experts to disguise themselves as Foundation establishment experts to fight her, and she lost several times. Master is wise. Jiang Shaoqi knew about this. These people had to fight the young lady, and at the same time, they had to ensure that she wasn't hurt during the fight. The reward for one fight was extremely high, comparable to a year's salary for him. But Jiang Shaoqi still didn't quite understand what was going on with Yi Jiang. Master, this subordinate has a question. Speak. Since they can disguise themselves, why don't you have other people use transformation spells to disguise themselves as misfighting Yi Jiang? That's the most troublesome part. Sunny Yuan said, when that little guy fought Rong, he used the boundless sword qi. It said that anyone who fights with the boundless sword qi will be stained with a special smell, which only the user of the boundless sword qi will be able to smell. The transformation spell can't deceive that little guy at all. Hearing this, Jiang Shaoqi instantly understood. He sighed in his heart at his master's thorough observation of the situation. To be able to sit in the head of the consortium and build up Huaguo water curtain groups so well, one really wouldn't be able to sit in this position without some skill. Furthermore, Jiang Shaoqi knew that his old man's cultivation was actually very profound, but he had never shown it to outsiders. Even Jiang Shaoqi, who had assisted him for so many years, had never seen old man Sun fight. A few minutes later, Jiang Shaoqi saw a notification from the building's security team. Master, they're already here. They're downstairs, said Jiang Shaoqi. Invite them up. Sunny Yuan waved his hand. He didn't even look up as he continued to stare at and admire the treasures on his desk. On the other side, Jiang Shaoqi was just about to make arrangements when old man Sun suddenly called him back. Wait. What else do you need, master? I've seen enough of these treasures. Take them out and find a master to make a few copies and send them off for me. Who are you giving them to? The same few people. Keep it a secret. Yes, master. Chapter 12:21. Headmaster Chen and Old Antique had already been waiting on the guest sofa on the first floor for a long time. At the bottom of the building, Jiang Shaoqi, dressed in an exquisite suit, personally came down to greet them with a very professional smile on his face. Sorry for the long wait. The chairman would like to speak upstairs. Very well. Headmaster Chen nodded. As soon as they got up, Jiang Shaoqi smiled insincerely and praised them. I've long heard of Headmaster Chen and Teacher Wang's reputations. It's my great fortune to be able to meet you today. Shaoqi grew up under Huaguo Water Curtain Group's tutelage and learned management in a completely closed environment. It's truly a pity that I didn't have the opportunity to experience life at school. Then, Secretary Jiang is welcome to experience life at my number 60 high school at any time, Headmaster Chen said casually when he heard this. Well said, well said. Jiang Shaoqi smiled as he led the two of them to the elevator. This was Old Antique's first time meeting Jiang Shaoqi, and he felt that this greasy-haired and powdered young man gave off a strong aura of a member of society. To be honest, he didn't like him very much. If a cultivator's worldly aura was too strong, it would also affect their realms. Old Antique's experience in the cultivation world was that he had his own set of rules for observing people's words and body language. Hence, his impression of Jiang Shaoqi wasn't very good. As a secretary, the most important thing was to be able to work quietly. A glib tongue would cause big trouble sooner or later. Old Antique shook his head inwardly. He didn't directly expose this point, nor could he explain to Old Man Sun why he had left such a person on his side. For Sunny Yuan to be able to run his business so well, his ability to read people might not be inferior to Old Antique's. Perhaps this Jiang Shaoqi was also his pawn. The elevator swiftly rose to the highest point of the building. Jiang Xiaoche led the way, and Headmaster Chen and Old Antique passed through the long corridor leading to the office. On both sides of the corridor were calligraphy and paintings by famous artists, which Headmaster Chen secretly marveled at. When all was said and done, this was Huaguo Water Curtain Group's strength. Any one of the paintings in the corridor would be enough for number 60 High to renovate 2 or 3 times over. In the huge office, Old Man Sun sat on a spacious sofa and fiddled with the tea set on the table. He had already poured 3 cups. As soon as Headmaster Chen and Old Antique were let in, Jiang Xiaoche consciously stood to one side. Then, he quietly withdrew from the office, closed the door, and skillfully stood guard outside. Mr. Sun's foresight is divine. It seems that you already know the purpose of our trip. Seeing this scene, Headmaster Chen knew that his and Old Antique's uninvited visit had already been completely controlled by this grizzled old man in front of him who didn't lose his heroic spirit. He had long heard that Huaguo Water Curtain Group had eyes all over the world, and that their intelligence network was comparable to that of Battle Sect, especially in Songhai City. This time, Headmaster Chen and Old Antique thoroughly experienced this power. You don't have to be so formal with me. Sit down and talk. Teacher Wang, you don't have to be too rigid. You are one of Tianxiang's most trusted people. Old Man Sun smiled, then pushed the tea on the table in front of the two of them. I can't thank Teacher Wang enough for taking care of Rongrong at school. You're too polite, Mr. Sunday. I'm just doing my duty as a teacher. Old Antique smiled. He had just picked up his tea when Old Man Sun's next question immediately froze him. I wonder if Teacher Wang's junior brother is doing well. When he said this, there wasn't the slightest ripple on Sun Yiyuan's face. He still had a benevolent smile on his face, but there was a bone-chilling coldness in it. Teacher Wang has a junior brother. Headmaster Chen was astonished, even he didn't know about this. Old Antique had thought that his identity and that of his junior brother, Taoist Tao Tai, had been concealed very well, and could be said to be flawless. Who would have thought that he would suffer a setback in front of this old man's son today? But it was clear that the other party didn't intend to expose him directly, and instead indirectly gave him a show of strength. Yes, of course he does. Old Antique was helpless, and could only go along with the flow. He's a junior brother I haven't been in touch with for many years. He's also a teacher, and is currently working at another school. Zhu Kong, that's not very nice of you. Our number 60 high school is in need of talent, wouldn't it be better if you directly referred him to our school? Headmaster Chen was immediately unhappy. His teaching is very average, in fact, you've always had high standards and high standards, in your eyes, average is already outstanding enough. We can talk about this later. I believe that Teacher Wang isn't deliberately hiding it. I'm afraid that his junior brother's teaching quality really isn't high. Old Man Sun smoothed things over. In Old Antique's eyes, his trademark kind smile was now completely a smile with a dagger hidden behind it. Out of the corner of his eye, Old Antique secretly sized up Sun Yiyuan through the steam from the teacup, and felt that this person was extremely dangerous and unfathomable. Tianxiang, you're here for Yi Jiang this time, right? Then, Old Man Sun got straight to the point. Sure enough, nothing can be hidden from Mr. Sun's eyes. Headmaster Chen was noncommittal. I also know the opinion of a psychologist. He wants our Rongrong to have another fake match with him and deliberately lose to him. Don't worry, Mr. Sun, the match is pseudo-public. We've arranged for everyone inside, and the match won't be leaked. Furthermore, it won't affect Huaguo Water Curtain Group's shares. That's not what I'm worried about. But a fake match will ultimately affect our Sun family's face. Old Man Sun said, besides, this little guy is General Yi's adopted son. Even if it's a fake match to treat this little guy's psychological problems, shouldn't that Blade Master come to me personally? The 10 generals are busy with official business. Mr. Sun should understand, I don't care if he's the 10 generals or ketchup, since I'm asking for help, I should have an attitude. But since you've come personally this time, Tianxiang, it's not like I can't give you face. Old Antique snickered in his heart. After going around in circles for so long, everything was just as he had imagined. This old fox had indeed started to raise his conditions. Mr. Sun, please speak. As long as it's not too excessive, we can discuss it. Headmaster Chen was a little nervous. He didn't know what on earth Sun Yiyuan wanted. To tell you the truth, for some reason, our Rongrong might need to take a break from school for a while. During this break, I'll invite the best teachers to teach her at home. At this point, Old Man Sun couldn't help but sigh, and even his voice began to tremble. But you two also know that our Rongrong's feelings for the students and teachers of the school this half a semester are hard to cut off in a short time. Her parents died early, and as her grandfather, I can't bear to let Rongrong endure this kind of pain. Then Mr. Sun means. Hearing this, Headmaster Chen seemed to have understood a little. I hope that the students in your school's elite class can take turns coming to our Sun family's side hall to accompany our Rongrong in class. I'll give a high compensation to the students who accompany her. Compensation. Material compensation, as well as emotional compensation. Whatever you want, as long as my Sun family can do it, we'll provide it. Old Man Sun said, I've already written out the reading attendance list. Can I take a look first? Headmaster Chen wiped at his sweat. Of course. Sun Yiyuan took out the list which he had prepared beforehand from his pocket. Headmaster Chen and Old Antique took it and looked at it. Sure enough, Old Man Sun had already made a detailed plan on the roster. Designated study companion on Monday, Wang Ling designated study companion on Tuesday, Wang Ling Wednesday, Wang Ling, Friday, or Wang Ling. Headmaster Chen and Old Antique. What happened to the rotation? Chapter 12:22. During class that day, Wang Ling stared blankly at the blackboard with his head in his hands, his eyelids twitching wildly. Even when he looked in the mirror in the bathroom, he could see the evil look on his face, the dark clouds above his head, and the feeling that death was coming. It wasn't until the end of the day in the afternoon that his eyelids stopped twitching abnormally. Sun Yiyuan's negotiations with Headmaster Chen and Old Antique ended on bad terms. Headmaster Chen couldn't agree to Old Man Sun's conditions because he couldn't make the decision on Wang Ling's behalf. The act of paying to accompany a student to study smacked of privilege. The Sun family's family was superior. Wouldn't it affect the child's self-esteem if they used money to find a student whose family wasn't as wealthy as the Sun family to accompany them? Number 60 High School's academic achievements were certainly important, but Chen Tianxiang actually paid more attention to the children's psychological development. To be honest, he felt that Old Man Sun's behavior was a little excessive. He felt that it was fine to just suggest that a teacher from number 60 High take some time out to tutor him. Moreover, tutoring was one thing, but the teacher who provided the tutoring couldn't charge a single cent otherwise. This matter would change. On the way back, the atmosphere in the private car was very low. Old Antique stared out the window, his voice as calm as when he had left. Is this really okay? Headmaster Chen skillfully took out a cigarette from the inside pocket of his shirt. Using the quick friction between his index finger and thumb, he lit the cigarette and took a deep drag. A bitter smile hung on his face. I have my own principles and bottom line. If I, the headmaster, don't follow the rules, how can I lead the teachers and children under me? I understand. Old Antique nodded. But after this trip, he and Headmaster Chen could be sure of one thing: even if the negotiations didn't come to an agreement, the Sun family wouldn't give a single cent less for number 60 High's school construction investment. With the Sun family's financial resources, they wouldn't be so stingy as to take back their previous promise because of such a small matter. It was a taboo for businessmen to break their promises. Given Mr. Sun's character, do you think he's the kind of person who would make unreasonable demands? Old Antique suddenly asked after a moment of silence in the car. Headmaster Chen frowned. Looks like you've noticed it too. The Sun family is in trouble. It should be big trouble. Headmaster Chen nodded. For Sun Yiyuan to be in such a desperate situation, it must have a lot to do with Lotus Sunday. Yes, but I have another question. Speak. What exactly is Sun Yuan's strength? Sun God, Headmaster Chen asked. On the same level as the 10 generals? Old Antique was astonished. It was no wonder that Old Man Sun was fearless when facing the Sword Saint. Old Antique. On the other side, Wang Ling was sitting cross-legged on his bed barefoot, trying his best to figure out why his eyelids had twitched so wildly in the afternoon. Then, his mind was filled with the image of Old Man Sun's benevolent face that hid a dagger behind his smile. Sure enough, his visit to Lotus Sun the day before yesterday had created a butterfly effect, causing trouble to keep coming. But he had already checked Lotus Sun with the king's eye, and there wasn't anything wrong with her body, nor was she cursed, so he didn't really understand why Old Man Sun was so nervous. Some of the words of Jianghu charlatans could be ignored. If one were to take it too seriously, the one who would get hurt would be himself. Were. Wang at Wang Wang at. Wang, old, Sun, old Wang the old of the. And the of Sun, Lotus Sun was Old Man Sun's only granddaughter, so it was understandable that the old man doted on Wang Ling. Wang Ling had felt this intergenerational doting before from Old Man Wang. Old Man Wang was already suffering from dementia, but he still remembered to bring Wang Ling fruit. He had ridden a tricycle from the village little by little to the entrance of the villa. This had shocked Wang Ling so much that he felt he would never forget it for the rest of his life. It was Father Wang who cooked tonight. It was less than a month before the due date, and Mother Wang needed peace and quiet to nurse the baby, so Father Wang obediently took over the housework, including washing and cleaning, and even cooking. But the problem was that Father Wang had never cooked before, so the night before, Mother Wang had personally come to talk to Wang Ling. She didn't ask for anything else, and only asked him to enlighten the kitchen utensils in the house so that Father Wang's enthusiasm for cooking wouldn't be dampened. Wang Ling was an obedient child, so he would naturally do as Mother Wang wished. So the dishes that Father Wang brought out tonight indeed looked pretty good, but they were all made with the effects of legendary kitchen utensils. With these utensils in hand, even someone who didn't know how to cook would look like a female live streamer with a beauty filter. Sour shredded potatoes, spicy boiled fish, grandma's braised pork, steamed tendon meatballs, mixed salad vegetables. It tastes good. Mother Wang picked up some with her chopsticks, a happy smile on her face. Oh my God, is that true or not? This is my first time cooking, and I just followed the steps in the video. I never thought I'd be so talented. Father Wang was also astonished by his own skills. At that moment, Wang Ling looked at the pots, bowls, ladles, spoons, and spatulas that he had enlightened. According to the feedback from the king's eye, the durability of these utensils had already dropped to 1/99. Wang Ling sighed endlessly in his heart as he ate the dishes that were almost identical to those made in restaurants. It was a good thing that Father Wang had later become a web novelist, otherwise he would have definitely been a good seedling to become a nuclear bomb. He had only made one meal, but the utensils that he had personally enchanted had almost been scrapped. It was clear how astonishing Father Wang's destructive power was. Father Wang had a habit of turning on the TV to listen to the news when he ate. As soon as the channel switched to True Central Channel 1, the dignified and well-dressed female anchor suddenly received an urgent document from the side. The female anchor's face was calm and collected, reflecting her extremely high professionalism. Next, we'll broadcast an urgent news. Shanghai City has just cracked a case of impersonating a killer, and the suspect, QXX, is currently being urgently interrogated at Shanghai First Prison. It is reported that QXX has plotted a number of criminal professional assassinations, and impersonated the leader of the killer world to issue challenges everywhere to illegally earn high challenge fees. Mother Wang looked at the news in amazement. Since when does True Central TV speak up for the killer world nowadays? Father Wang smiled. Honey, you don't understand. I heard that after Shadow Stream was taken down, the killer world started to turn over a new leaf, and has worked with the cultivation police to solve a number of cases in the last few months. Mother Wang sked. The boss of the killer world is really weird. Wang Ling, you're the big boss. Chapter 1223. After dinner, Wang Ling and Battle Sect verified that the criminal the CCTV female live streamer was talking about was in fact the person who had been pretending to be Mother Wang and acting as Numinous Mother. This person's full name was Keone Duncan, and he was a foreign cultivator with blonde hair and blue eyes. Grenade-throwing senior immortal sent Wang Ling a photo of him. This man was thin and didn't look like Wang Ling's stereotypical impression of Western cultivators. Of course, Wang Ling had to admit that he was a little inflexible in this regard, but to his knowledge, Western cultivators did indeed have certain requirements for fitness. At an International Alliance of Cultivators meeting, whether a Western cultivator was a cultivator or not could be seen from the size of their muscles. In contrast, Eastern cultivators paid more attention to the sense of bone, because their muscles would naturally grow as they cultivated, but they could use magic to condense their muscles so that they didn't look so exaggerated. So in comparison, the cultural difference between Eastern and Western cultivators could be seen in muscles. One was reserved, while the other was bold and passionate. But that didn't rule out the possibility that a small number of Eastern and Western cultivators might be influenced by each other's cultures and choose to walk the other's path. Brother Ling, he wasn't like this before. After grenade-throwing senior immortal sent Keone's current photo, he then sent Keone's ID photo. Just as Wang Ling had initially thought, Keone in the ID photo was indeed very muscular. But the key wasn't his appearance, but the ID itself. Wang Ling was astonished to discover that this Keone was actually from SBP. SBP? What's that? On the side, Loopy Toad didn't understand. Grenade-throwing senior immortal said on the phone, it's an investigation organization that works side by side with the SCP Foundation. The SCP is dedicated to investigating all kinds of unconfirmed cultivation secrets, magic treasures, or mutant spirit beasts. SBP is equivalent to a detective investigation organization under the banner of the International Alliance of Cultivators, but everything it investigates is based on evidence. They definitely have another purpose in visiting Huaxiao Nation this time. They're now investigating the possibility that Keone is involved in espionage. Wang Ling gently rubbed his chin. He felt that this Keone might be carrying some unspeakable secret. Based on current leads, Keone has been in Huaxiao Nation for a very long time to investigate something. In order to thoroughly prove his identity as a native cultivator, he changed his appearance and disguised himself as an Easterner. Furthermore, he pretended to be Numinous Mother to swindle funds for his activities and investigations. This SBP is so stingy. Why aren't you paying? It's very obvious that Keone doesn't intend to take the risk. Once he's caught, he'll be sent back straight away. When grenade-throwing senior immortal said this, he was actually a little puzzled. Based on the current situation, Keone didn't do anything bad while he was pretending to be the Numinous Mother. The people he had killed were basically all wanted criminals, including Dark Ancestor Xie Sanshao, who had died in the stalactite cave after his resurrection. He had also died at Keone's hands. This person's strength was also very strong. If it weren't for grenade-throwing superior battle prowess, he wouldn't have been able to find clues in such a short time and take down Korn. Did he say anything? Asked Loopy Toad. Not a word so far. Furthermore, a powerful forbidden spell had been cast on his body. If he said half a word, he would die. Forcefully breaking it would also trigger the effects of the forbidden spell. That's why I'm calling Brother Ling this time to ask if he has any good ideas, said grenade-throwing senior immortal over the phone. Although his realm was high, there were all kinds of forbidden spells in the cultivation world. In addition, grenade-throwing senior immortal wasn't particularly proficient in spells to begin with, so he was now stuck in this predicament. If he could, grenade-throwing actually didn't want to trouble Wang Ling. But the problem was that this SBP was a little cunning, even forcibly dismantling it could endanger a person's life, which was a little difficult. And Wang Ling definitely had a way to deal with it. But Wang Ling still needed to observe for a while before he could be sure what this forbidden spell was. That night, Loopy Toad received Wang Ling's instructions and went to Songhai First Prison in his place. When the two guards at the prison gate saw the fluorescent green-furred dog appear in the dark, they immediately opened the gate and let it in. It was now somewhat famous in Battle's sect, and this feeling of being revered made Loopy Toad feel very good. It felt that it had found its social status as a demon king in the demon world. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was standing guard at the prison gate. When he saw Loopy Toad, he immediately came forward to greet it. Brother Ling didn't come. Although he was smiling, Loopy Toad could clearly sense a trace of disappointment in his tone. Loopy Toad walked in without raising its head. Little Master Ling still has homework to finish, so he doesn't need to do these trivial things himself. It's not a little. It's a new type of problem. The two gremlins haven't completely mastered it yet. Young Master Ling has to do it once first. Jiu Lu Wei, this was a very good reason, and for a moment, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal couldn't refute it. As expected of Brother Ling. Even if the sky fell down, it wouldn't stop him from finishing his homework. After a brief silence, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said, "But if Brother Ling doesn't come, who else can solve this forbidden spell?" "I can." After saying that, Loopy Toad spat out a glass bottle from its mouth, and Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal saw a floating eyeball inside. Although it had already been taken out, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal recognized it at one glance as Wang Ling's dead fish eye. "Little Master Ling had me bring an eyeball, and it's enough to solve the forbidden spell." As expected of Brother Ling. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal couldn't help praising him as he held the glass bottle devoutly. "Don't do strange things to this glass bottle. Although this eyeball has been taken out, Little Master Ling can still feel it." "Brother Dog, you're being too polite. How could a righteous person like me do strange things to Brother Ling's eyeball? The only person in this world who can do strange things is that big brother of Brother Ling's." Loopy Toad chuckled, thinking that the crow laughing at the pig was also very interesting. One man and one dog arrived at the interrogation room. Cowan was wearing the spirit shackles as he ate a boxed lunch that Warden Liang had provided. Because of the forbidden spell, Warden Liang knew that it was useless for him to ask. It was better to let Cowan eat something first, lest this foreigner find an excuse to shirk responsibility after the curse was broken. After all, their prison's attitude toward prisoners had always been pretty good. It was just that Warden Liang hadn't expected this Cowan to have such an astonishing appetite. He had already eaten more than 120 portions of crispy chicken drumstick rice. The empty meal boxes piled up like a small mountain next to Cowan. "This SBP is too stingy, they don't even pay for food. Look at how hungry this kid is." When Loopy Toad rushed over, it was stupefied by the scene in front of it. This guy is actually a match for that wildebeest of Een. Little Silver's appetite has gone down recently, and he says he wants to lose weight. He doesn't even order takeout anymore. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said, "He eats meat to grow his body, and his wings haven't grown at all. He can't fly anymore." Cowan. At that moment, Loopy Toad stared at the blue-eyed young man who was eating rice in the interrogation room. As soon as the young man raised his head, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal pulled the cork out of the glass bottle, and Wang Ling's king's eye directly turned into a flash of light that appeared in front of Cowan. Buzz! The color of the king's eye turned white, and it gave off a pure and holy light. The entire interrogation room was instantly enveloped in a dazzling light. As expected of Brother Ling, this is the effect of eye cleansing, which can purify all curses. It can be considered a normal ability. Previously, my lord's eyes had the effect of pregnant eyes, but my lord got rid of this ability. Pregnant eyes? Whoever it stares at will get pregnant. After saying this, Loopy Toad felt extremely helpless. It felt that Wang Ling had some foresight. If this pregnant eyes ability really existed, and a few more little Wang Lings appeared out of nowhere in the world, the earth might directly blow up. If you like the Immortal King's daily life, please collect the Immortal King's daily life. Chapter 1224. At that moment, the SBP, the International Alliance of Cultivators, was holding a secret meeting. 7 black figures appeared at the meeting table. These were the SBP's envoys, and they could jointly decide and vote on the organization's next action plan. To ensure the fairness of the vote, the 7 people chosen by the alliance as envoys had their identities concealed from each other from the day the SBP was established, thus eliminating the possibility of winning them over internally. As an extremely prestigious investigation organization affiliated with the alliance, the coordinates of Dark Ancestor CS Sanshao, who had shocked the world back then, had been calculated by these 7 people. Unfortunately, because of a major mistake, they had been a step too late at the last step, and hadn't been able to capture that Dark Ancestor alive. In the end, CS Sanshao had died of conceit and carelessness, as he couldn't withstand the spirit power of the heavenly vein valve. In order to preserve the organization's reputation, the 7 envoys of the SBP finally agreed to promote a hero, and this hero was Odd Zhuo's ancestor, Zhuo Butong. For more information, please refer to Chapter 1105. Dark Ancestor CS Sanshao and Zhuo Butong, Judgment, have invited everyone here this time to say one thing. The black figure in the middle of the 7 seats spoke in a sharp and comical voice. Everyone's voices had been edited so that it was impossible to tell if they were men or women. Since they didn't know each other's names, they could only call each other by their code names. The seats in each meeting were fixed, and the person who was now sitting in seat number 4 called himself Judgment. "Is something wrong?" asked the person in seat number 1. Her code name was Moon, which was a very feminine code name, but that didn't mean that the person in seat number 1 was a woman. "Cyan Duncan has been discovered." Judgment's voice sounded especially serious, and the scores in the room instantly started to become tense. Cohen was sent to Huaxiao Nation 20 years ago, and has been flawless all these years. How was he discovered? Everyone was puzzled. In order for Cohen to better integrate into the other side, they had even cut off all contact with him and placed all their faith in him, hoping that he could investigate the whole story and eventually return to the Foundation. "It's because of Battle Sect," said Star in seat number 2. No one knew where Star came from, but this person seemed to have the prophetic ability of an astrologer, just like his code name, and often had more information than anyone else. "Not bad." Judgment nodded. Originally, Keon's method of disguising himself as the primogenitor of the world of assassins, Numinous Mother, was indeed impeccable. However, in a recent mission, he had exposed himself. It was hard not to be suspicious that the Foundation had deliberately and secretly plotted to bury this person in Huaxiao Nation. "Mr. Keon, even if you don't say anything now, we can still arrest you on espionage charges. We can lock you up here for 100 years, 200 years, together with the 3 most famous people in our prison. They're currently short of one. I've been looking for a long time, but I haven't found anyone suitable to lock up." Warden Liang spoke to Keon through a telepathic device through a glass wall. He paid close attention to Keon's expression and observed the other party's micro-expressions. Inducing confessions was a set of rules that Warden Liang was very familiar with, but it was completely ineffective against Keon. He had received professional SBP training and was very cultured. Even after the forbidden spell had been removed, he still refused to say anything. No matter what Warden Liang asked, there wasn't the slightest ripple of emotion on his face. After closing the conversation button, Warden Liang looked at grenade-throwing Senior Immortal next to him, feeling rather helpless. "What do we do, Senior Immortal? Ordinary interrogation doesn't seem to work on him. Everyone has their weakest point in their heart, and no one is invulnerable." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal looked at the young man in front of him through the glass. "If he doesn't want to talk, perhaps we can start with someone close to him first. Warden Liang, do you know where Keon used to live?" "We're still investigating, but we only have a general idea," said Warden Liang. "It's fine, Brother Dog happens to be here. Let it track him around the area, and we should be able to find Keon very quickly." The two of them hit it off. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was just about to take Loopy Toad out to investigate. At that moment, Warden Liang suddenly received an urgent report. A stream of light exploded in front of his eyes to form a string of characters. This was news from Songhai City's Huaxiao Alliance. How could this be? Warden Liang stared at the content with a face full of disbelief. What's going on? Songhai City's Huaxiao Alliance wants us to release him. Release him? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Loopy Toad were stunned at the same time. Chapter 1227. After listening to Gu Xuanji's analysis, everyone nodded. In the end, a keeper of order was a keeper of order. It looked like there was a reason why the heavenly Tao had taken a liking to Gu Xuanji. To be able to resolve the mystery with just a few words was probably the accumulated experience of a keeper of order who intervened in disputes between various races in the universe all year round and was responsible for mediating. But it was clear that these deductions alone weren't enough to deduce the identity of the person behind the scenes. If we're going to pretend to be one of them and make the jump, we have to at least confirm the identity of one of the 7 ID cards. Wang Zhen folded his arms as he stared at the list on the ground, feeling completely clueless about what to do. Although the cultivation civilization on Earth wasn't as developed as that of the domain of the gods, Wang Zhen felt that he had come to the right place for being trapped on Earth by the heavenly Tao this time. Where there were people, there were disputes, and the disputes on Earth weren't any less than in the domain of the gods. Although Wang Zhen had felt a little aggrieved when he had first been trapped here, after getting used to life here, he even started to like life on Earth a little. Studying with Ling Jinren was indeed a very happy thing. What did Ling Jinren say? Wang Zhen asked at that moment. Little Master is still doing homework. Loopy Toad couldn't help looking at Wang Zhen, Gu Xuanji, and the other people from the domain of the gods. By the way, have you finished your homework? No. Wang Zhen shook his head. Loopy Toad, then why are you so calm? At that moment, Wang Zhen looked at Gu Xuanji. Old Gu hired someone from number 60 high to send us the answers to all the homework via DingTalk at exactly 2:00 every day. He just copied them. Loopy Toad took a deep breath and couldn't help frowning. This learning attitude was too bad. But it wasn't that it couldn't understand. Earth's cultural knowledge was very easy for these bigwigs from the domain of the gods. Given Gu Xuanji's IQ, he might have developed solutions that hadn't been developed on Earth yet. If they answered the questions based on their habitual thinking, their true identities might be exposed. So in this situation, Gu Xuanji had chosen to hire someone to do the homework, and then copied it himself. Copying homework was the easiest thing to do. Gu Xuanji had learned this skill from Super Chen and Dopey Gua, these 2 wily old foxes who worked from dawn to dusk to copy homework, after coming to Earth. Of course, only Gu Xuanji would spend money to hire people. He was a keeper of order, and his salary was paid by the heavenly Tao. Wang Zhen and Lu Qingyi also basked in the limelight. After being baptized in poverty, they had become very sensitive to all kinds of expenses. After that, Audiobook swiftly formulated a plan based on the clues in front of him. Senior Wang Zhen, Senior Lu Qingyi, go support Senior Immortal. If nothing unexpected happens, Senior Immortal will probably run into a wall in Beijing. No problem. The 2 nodded. Audiobook was a little surprised that he had agreed so quickly. He felt that after coming back from the national competition this time, their relationship seemed to have eased up a lot and wasn't as incompatible as before. Senior Jinyuan, please follow me. No problem. Immortal Jinyuan had been sitting obediently the whole time, his fiery red long hair fluttering in the wind along with his surging aura. He was excited. Zhuo then turned his gaze to Wei Ji. Senior Li Huanran and Senior Jiang Yingyue, who's in seclusion in the washroom, are both important witnesses. I'll have to trouble Brother Wei Ji to keep an eye on them for the time being. It's fine. Wei Ji shook his head. Immortal Jinyuan had already set up a restriction in this apartment which was specially designed to deal with external intrusions and Jiang Yingyue. As long as Jiang Yingyue showed any intention to escape or attack, the restriction would immediately activate and crush her to the ground like a pancake. Jiang Yingyue had tried it once before, and her personal evaluation was that her chest hurt from being crushed, as if the silicone inside had almost burst. She didn't dare try it a second time. After assigning tasks, Lupi Toad was the only one left. Go look for Immortal Toya and Silyan Jinren, Zhuo said at that moment. Why are you looking for them? I need to know how the hollow spirits invade. From Senior Gu's deduction, it's very likely that they're attached to a person's body. Since they're attached to a person's body, maybe there's a rejection reaction. Of course, this is just my guess. Senior Immortal Toya has a lot of medical information at his disposal, so he might know some clues. I understand. Lupi Toad nodded. They had split into 3 groups, and everything was within Zhuo's plans. Although his realm was low, he had always been able to see the big picture. This was also an important reason why he had taken a liking to him and accepted him as his disciple. Furthermore, Zhuo had always been a person who dared to take responsibility for his actions, and wasn't afraid of being made a scapegoat. Just as everyone was about to set off, Zhuo suddenly spoke to Li Huanran. Wait, there's something else. What is it? Li Huanran asked. I have a feeling that you might be one of the focal points of this incident, Senior Li. It's very likely that someone will make a move on you while we're gone, but Senior Jinyuan has set up a restriction here, so most people can't get in, Wei Ji said. But we can't rule out the possibility that if the hollow spirits come looking for you, they might have some special methods, right? Speaking up to this point, Zhuo took out a pair of long johns from his storage bag. This is for you, Senior Li. My Shifu left this for me. I have another set here, and this is a spare. Put it on first, just in case. This is... Li Huanran held the long johns with a bewildered look on his face. This is Earth, no, perhaps the most powerful armor in the universe. At that moment, Jinyuan couldn't help sighing on the side. At 22:15, Wang Ling put his homework on hold. He took a shower and changed into his big white bunny pajamas, and at the same time kept an eye on Zhuo's situation from a distance. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had rushed to Jinghua City alone. Although it was dangerous, Wang Ling felt that it shouldn't be a problem. He still had his King's Eye, which was enough to deal with the current predicament. Hollow spirits. Earlier, Wang Ling had asked the Sun Spirit what on earth was behind the Gate of the Void. The Sun Spirit had told him that there was nothing behind the Gate of the Void. Until now, Wang Ling still hadn't understood what this meant. Then, Wang Ling took out the omniscient phenomenon pillar, which Wang Ying had used previously from his pencil case. This pillar had already shrunk to the size of a needle. This was a void object, and Wang Ling had been looking for a suitable opportunity to send it back. Now, he felt that the opportunity had come. Since the other party had invaded through the void, he had to return the favor. Thinking this, Wang Ling used his other King's Eye to carve a Heavenly Tao poem that was widely circulated in Heavenly Tao on the omniscient phenomenon pillar. What year is a dream? 3,000 transformations while sitting on the ground. The heart is connected to the whole universe. Even without Tao, one can become an immortal. After that, Wang Ling's mind stirred, and he located the Gate of the Void. He then opened the window and flicked his fingers to send the omniscient phenomenon pillar out. Chapter 1229. Audra used a face-molding pill on the market to give himself a simple makeover. After taking this pill, his face would be adjusted within half an hour, and his facial features would become as soft as plasticine. However, it was clear that Audra's face-molding skills weren't very good. He did it in Wei Ji's house, and after he was done, he couldn't help sighing. AI. So ugly. But it's already effective. Leaning against the door, immortal Jin Yuan scrutinized Audra in the mirror with a very immortal smile. I've embarrassed myself in front of Senior Jin Yuan. Audra scratched his head in embarrassment. In any case, he was only doing the face molding for the mission, there was nothing he could do if his skills were too poor. You look like a web novelist now. There can't be an uglier novelist than this, right? Kushuan. After everything was ready, the two of them went to the underground parking lot of the staff apartment and walked up to a white Wuling Hongguang. This was Wei Ji's car and had been specially modified by him. There was a lot of room inside for dozens of large spirit beasts, and it was an essential tool for Wei Ji's family. Now, Audra had urgently requisitioned it. Wei Ji wasn't worried at all that the car would be damaged. Battle Sect was rich, even if it was damaged, they would compensate him, and would definitely give him a better one. This car is very sturdy. Jin Yuan touched the white Wuling Hongguang van and found that it was made of armor, the same material used on air immortal warships. It was light and sturdy. Coupled with the magic coating on the outside, it could even withstand a few waves of spirit power missiles. Get in, Audra shouted and took the initiative to sit in the driver's seat. As the car drove out, Audra saw a familiar old man. This person was none other than Marshal Jiang. Not good, Audra felt that they might be in trouble. As the van drove through the gate, sure enough, Marshal Jiang stopped them. Old man Jiang, who was wearing a vest and waving a palm leaf fan in his hand, looked at Audra in disguise. Parking fee, 5 yuan. Audra was blank. Parking fee, 5 yuan. Hurry up, don't waste so much time. Old man Jiang was a little impatient. Are you little Ji's friends? Why haven't I seen you before? I came to visit out of the blue. Audra pretended to be calm as he handed over a 5 yuan note. Alright, let's go. Grandpa Jiang took the money and threw it into a worn-out iron box. Then, he pressed the remote control in his hand and opened the gate. Be careful when you go out. Audra sensed that there seemed to be a hidden meaning behind these words, but he didn't dare stay any longer. He stepped on the accelerator and drove the car up the slope. Old Master Jiang smiled as he watched the van drive away. At this moment, beside the metal box filled with change, the old man who had not hung up the phone let out a hearty laugh. Ha ha ha, I knew this kid would be fine. Da Kang, are you relieved now? He's my chosen successor, so I have to show some concern for him. On the other end of the line, Secretary Da Kang laughed. This kid always brings me some surprises. His clone actually managed to fool even the spirit shackles. So, is there any progress on this matter? It's blown up a little. Although it hasn't reached the point where it's impossible to recover from what's done, it's bound to be very chaotic in the next few days, Marshal Jiang said as he waved his palm leaf fan. The head of state already suspects the mastermind behind this, but it's better to bide our time for now. Does the head of state suspect that one of the 10 of us has already been invaded by a hollow spirit? Yes. What on earth is this thing? Marshal Jiang felt a headache coming on. I don't know, but I can say for sure that it's not easy to deal with. You also have to be careful, old Jiang. It seems to have a special way of not only attaching itself to you, but also spreading it. Leaving the staff apartment, Audra still had lingering fears about what had just happened at the gate. Why do I feel like I've been discovered? Yes, but that little friend didn't directly expose you, Immortal Jin Yuan said with a smile in the front passenger seat. Little friend, thousands of years ago, when this old grandpa was a child, I had a fight with him. He cried and shouted that he wanted revenge. He's probably forgotten about it now. Odd Zhuo was astonished as he thought that immortal Zhen Yuan was indeed worthy of being called a legendary cultivator on earth and the man who had created the gate between worlds. He had even seen the 10 generals when they were children. This cultivation was probably at least 10,000 years old. At that moment, Odd Zhuo's imagination suddenly ran wild. If his Shifu also had 10,000 years of experience, how terrifying would he be? After all, he was only 16 years old right now. Driving at top speed, Odd Zhuo finally stopped not far from a toll booth on the outskirts of Shanghai City. Zhen Yuan instantly understood what Odd Zhuo was thinking. This person was probably trying to intercept him. Earlier, Battle Sect's intelligence department sent word that Qion has already been sent out of Shanghai No. 1 prison and will be transferred to Jinghua City. Choosing a vehicle. The other party is very cunning. They've chosen multiple routes and dispatched multiple surveillance vehicles. According to the intelligence department's calculations, the probability of this route being the correct one is as high as 70%. What if we make a mistake? Then we can only leave it to Senior Immortal and the others. Odd Zhuo sighed softly, his eyes fixed closely on the ETC passage at the toll booth. About 10 minutes later, sure enough, a modified black and white surveillance vehicle drove through the passage. He's indeed in the car.